to the end zone, caught, touchdown. Oscar Delp's got 2 tonight, and the Dogs are in front.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Jetty has a seam, and Jetty to the 20, Jetty to the 10, Jetty to the end zone! Touchdown, Boise State!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Strong into the end zone. Jennings with the hook up to Jordan Hudson for the much-needed touchdown. An SMU answer, and they've got the lead back.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Levitt looking middle, throws, end zone, and what a catch! Tyson, touchdown! And I think he got that foot down.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Second down, they'll go a little more conservative. Don't tell that to Bryson Washington. Touchdown! 51 yards.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on a Friday, 365 Sports, and hope you've had a really good day and hope you have a great weekend planned. College football with 2 weeks left in the regular season. And then, of course, conference championship weekend in December. Then, of course, we will, though, after that, who's going to be playing for the national championship. We'll get into a little bit of that and much more. Another coach, college football coach in Texas with a contract extension. Some beautiful helmets to look at today, along with much more, including hearing the violin music for Garrett Ross when it comes to LSU football. He now joins Craig at Oklahoma, David Smoak, Nebraska, and Florida State's Paul Catalina, what we've dealt with most of the year. Big list of guests, too. Sam Kahn, Grayson Grundhafer, Mike Scarborough, Peyton Socher, and Kenneth Davis, Josh Neighbors today on 365 Sports. But by the way, Matt Ritson had a super chat to us yesterday. Matt, I had it copied and pasted, and then I just blanked out and did not thank you for that. We appreciate it. He had a note about the Hawaii AD getting fired for poor performances at jobs or other jobs. And so I'm sorry that I did not read that and recognize you and acknowledge that. Thank you so much for the super chat yesterday during the show.
The Hawaii AD will get another job.
You hear about the NIL, the guy who's a big donor for NIL saying he might pull all his money?
He'll get another job. But yeah, look, of all the AD jobs that I could lose in my life, I think I would take that one the hardest.
Yeah, I mean, the AD lost his job after a year and a half. There's a new president, and the guy, the top booster, said he is pulling all of his NIL funds. So that is the story, and it's actually very interesting. So, yeah, to the subscriber, to the donator there, whose name slipped me just now, but we really appreciate it. Sorry we didn't get to that, and we'll try to be better about getting to super chats because we know those aren't just willy-nilly, just things that you just send for fun all the time. So
yep, it's extra. We appreciate it.
I do honestly, because if I was look, and no offense to these schools, but like if you're the AD, at Iowa, like, oh bum, I have to move out of Iowa City. If they're like, hey, you need to leave Honolulu, I'd be like, the F I do.
Yeah. Where can I get a food truck or something?
Yeah. You'll pry me out of this office center over with my cold dead hands.
Scotty B, S. Michael DeHart, the old barn cat, Kim, Coulter, Xavier Wolf, Paxton, Shorty, Chris, Muncie, Arbuck, and who else have I not hit? Clint and Paula, thank you all. Dustin for being a part of the Super Chat already early today. So here's what happened late in the game last night in a game that went double overtime. Baylor and St. John's, Scott Drew, who will be a part of the Hall of Fame, against Rick Pitino, who is a part of the Hall of Fame. St. John's is up 2. They're at the free throw line, and here's how this game ended.
Ejiofor is second. Off the front rim. Omier has it.
with 2. Roach for the win. It's good!
Oh, man. Can you believe that? Neither one of these teams could shoot free throws last night. It set up a win for Baylor in the Bahamas. They'll play Tennessee tonight against St. John's. Here is where this was at one point, with St. John's led at one point by 18. They led by 6 or 5 with 9 seconds left in the game. That looks like a bad, massive heart attack or a really bad time on Wall Street. Up and down, Baylor eventually at the buzzer. Jeremy Roach, the transfer from Duke, hit the 3, and a win that Baylor needed, a win that St. John's needed. But Baylor, after that loss earlier this year to Gonzaga, so a little college basketball to start us with it today, and a huge win in the Bahamas.
Baylor's defense is not what I would call good.
Nope.
I think it might get better, mostly because it has nowhere to go but up right now, given the talent that they have. But they have dudes who can score points, and they had a lot of good. Like VJ Edgecombe didn't even have a good game last night, and outside of a thrunk that he had, which he always has a throwdown on somebody in each game, even when he's not scoring. But O'Meara was great last night. Robert Wright was great last night. Jeremy Roach was clutch last night. They had 5 or 6 guys in double figures. They can score. Now, if they can just figure out that whole don't let the ball go in the rim for the other team thing, they're going to be formidable.
St. John shot over 50%. Both teams shot really well from threes, and Baylor wins that game at the buzzer. Pitino wasn't happy after the game. One quick note from this. This is Rick Pitino following the double overtime loss to Baylor.
I felt at the end of the game that it was highly unethical to go to the camera on a BS makeup and icing my free throw shooter. Highly unethical, and the referee should never let it happen.
So what happened is there was a play in which Scott Drew thought that there might have been an elbow. He went to the officials. They did go to the replay to check it, so there was a delay. But his player at the free throw line missed both of the free throws, not just the one you saw, that could have iced the game, just like both teams had others who missed free throws at critical times during that game that would have iced the game. In fact, after the game was over, Jeremy Roach said that I had to do something to make up for me missing free throws that would have sealed the game a couple of different times for Baylor.
Let me just say my opinion. Make the free throw.
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
Go ahead, Craig.
No, I was going to say, is it me or is that just a recurring issue with this team nearly every single season? If you say, like, some years defense is better than other years, some years the offense is really great, or, not quite up to par, but I don't think there's any year where, like, man, they're really good at free throws. It's every year free throws are going to cost them a game. Free throws put them in trouble. So I don't know why that's such a nagging issue, but am I like making up things in my head, or does it seem like it's been about like 5 years in a row where it's like, man, free throws are really going to cost them at some point?
Yeah, no, I had a coach one time tell me when I did games for Tyler Junior College, he had a kid, a guard, that shot like 64% free throws, a point guard, but he was 95% in the last 5 minutes of a game. They started charting his free throws. Gerald Williams, a phenomenal player that led them to the national tournament. Now, yesterday it was G.J. Kinney. Today, Rhett Lashley from SMU gets an extension, his contract extension. The school announcing this. Of course, he's had a great run, 13th right now in the college football playoff. On right now, a collision course to play for the ACC championship game. So he has an extension, SMU tying him up. There it is. And SMU, in fact, the press release from Chris Smith, I get their SMU emails. It said extended with an exclamation mark at the very top.
Yeah, I got to meet Chris when I was there. Great guy, by the way. And they hook us up with Coach Lashley and players all the time. So we love SMU because they hook us up. But this is great news for them. I don't think he was going anywhere anyway. I think that Arkansas job might be a little bit enticing to him because he's from Arkansas, but it's not open. And we don't think that any big jobs are going to be open. And SMU might win the ACC this year in their first year. Why would he want to go anywhere else, especially considering that the alumni are as excited as they've been in 40 years about this football program and are throwing the sizable amount of money they have behind it to make sure that SMU falls behind no one when it comes to what you need to compete in modern college football.
They've done a really good job there in that in that tenure of his, and he's made SMU football exciting. He's made them noteworthy, and obviously he's got them in a position, as you said, to play for the ACC championship if they close this out right. So, yeah, they're on a upward trajectory, and he's the face of it right now. He's got a good young quarterback. He's got talented players he's brought in via traditional recruiting, but also, like, we've seen a lot of Miami guys from his ties there that have come over, like Brashard Smith, and made big impacts for them. So they've had a little bit of good in just about every area you could have, excitement levels, recruiting, donations, wins, all of that stuff. And, yeah, they're in a really good spot, so it makes sense to reward him. Especially as you see a lot of these but these announcements, which I think in some cases are kind of performative, because it is like, where are you going, G.J. Kinney? You know, but it's like, it's good that you earned that extension and you earned that money, so, good for you. But, yeah, Lashley certainly deserved it. I do agree with Paul, though, of like, where are you going to go? So I don't think that's as much of a threat, but I don't think you just sign guys to contract extensions only if you're afraid you're going to lose them. You do it because you're rewarding them. And so I think that's what we've seen the last 2 days. More so than in years past, when I think a lot of that would be like, let's cut this off and increase that buyout. I think that's less the case maybe this offseason, because it doesn't appear as though there's going to be any huge shakeups, at least involving the guys that have been rewarded these last couple of days. I don't think the LSU job opens up, and Rhett Lashley's probably the first choice for that, or definitely not G.J. Kinney, but I like both those guys. They've been on this show a lot. Good for them, and it's fun watching their team. So, hey, right on. All right,
Houston tomorrow will host Baylor tomorrow evening, and this is their flashback to the old Love You Blue of the Houston Oilers. John McClain was discussing this. Remember, the NFL tried to say, hey, no. Not every Houston fan likes these. I mean, not every fan likes everything, even if they're pretty cool. But they said, don't do this again. And here's Houston tomorrow hosting Baylor with the Love You Blue colors from back in the day.
Former AD Chris Pesman basically told the NFL to go screw.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that sentiment is kept through with the new administration, because, look, I get the NFL wants to protect their trademark and blah, blah, blah. But look, between the owner who owns that team, the ownership group who owns the Oilers and that color, and the NFL, outside of 1 week a year, you don't wear them. What would be best for everybody involved is if you just, sold the name back to Cal McNair and let him change his very blandly named team to the Oilers, and let's make peace. Not going to happen, I know, but look, Houston, the NFL does not own Columbia Blue. They don't own Columbia Blue. This is about city pride. I'm for it. Stick it to the man. Houston Cougs.
Well, it's not Love You Blue. It's Houston Blue.
Houston Blue,
There's the difference. It's Houston Blue, according to the school, so it's not Love You Blue.
Well, there's one way legally to get around it.
Hey, I don't see them getting sued right now by the NFL, so if it works, it works. And, it's Houston Blue, according to the Cougars, and so they're also able to sell merchandise, I do believe, and that's a big part of when we saw those uniforms debuted last year was with the NFL threat. I don't know that they ever even attempted to follow through on selling. I don't know for sure, but I felt like that, at least in the moment we were talking about it, cut that off. But if you found a loophole and you can get Houston Blue past the copyrights and all that, then go sell hundreds of thousands of dollars in merchandise. Houston, go have at it. They've debuted it not only in football but also in volleyball as well this month. So they're making this look like it's going to be something we see more often than not, or we'll see somewhat regularly. So I like that they're leaning into it. I think it's a cool alternative. We see teams do all sorts of alternative stuff, but this one really resonates and I think makes a lot of sense for this program in particular. So I like the look. I like the nod. I like that they're not backing down from the NFL, and we'll see how well they play in them tomorrow, but I know they're going to look good.
Chris Pesman, who's the AD, was the AD before he was out. We're doing it. We've reviewed everything and come to the conclusion that we're going to proceed. This was after the NFL, of course, asked them to stop wearing those uniforms.
And you'll see a lot more Houston Blue tomorrow, because I do believe they've got like 20,000 rally towels in Houston Blue that we're going to be part of the promotions tomorrow for that game. So if you see those towels, then you heard it here. But, that's going to be a part of wearing those uniforms and just the whole festivities against Baylor.
Now we love showing uniforms, helmets. Some are better than others. Some are unbelievably extraordinary. Utah will be wearing these helmets. Man, that's a lot. And yet again, I love the color scheme. I love red anyway, red any kind of color. I think their jerseys are great. But here's the University of Utah, the Utes, and their helmet that they're unveiling.
Well, do you want a breakdown of them? Because I can give you a little bit of a breakdown on them. They are the Maulana Lahaina helmets. That's the name that they're going with here. And you can tell by the logos, the graphics, that is Hawaiian tattoo art, those graphics that you see there. And they are hand-painted. There's actually some pictures of the artist who is in like his workshop, and you see all the helmets laid out, and he's just meticulously going and putting the details on there. But yeah, they're going to wear those against Iowa State, and there's really beautiful homages in here. Obviously, you've got the Polynesian the Hawaiian tattoos there. But the big thing about these is they are part of, and I got this via KSL, which does a great job out in Utah. I know we have some of their guys on from time to time, but they do a great job covering Utah and BYU. And these not only pay homage to their Polynesian culture roots, but also a reminder of the ongoing rebuilding efforts in Lahaina from the fires last year that you saw that wreaked havoc in Hawaii. And there's an outline actually somewhere on here, I don't know exactly where, of the iconic front street in Lahaina that burned down.
Yeah, that was where I honeymooned.
Okay, yeah, so you know all too well.
Yeah, I honeymooned there. Lahaina was, if you've ever been there in Maui, it was a really cool place. It goes back in time a little bit, because now when you go to things that are like historic, like just go to Bourbon Street. Like Bourbon Street still has, a lot of historical things to it. But like right next to a 275-year-old bar, there's also like a crappy little chicken hut, right? Mm-hmm. And so it loses a little bit of its history to it. Lahaina was one of the last places in America where you could go where it felt like it could be like if you just took cell phones out of people's hands, it's 1977 again. It's just like it was, and I hope they can build it back that way. And big ups to Utah for supporting Lahaina.
Yeah, and the word malama means to take care of, nurture, preserve the land and its people. So malama Lahaina means to take care, Lahaina, nurture Lahaina. So yeah, there's the big tributes there, including the Lahaina front street that burned down, and big nod as well to the very deep Polynesian culture in the Utes program. So Armando Villarreal is the artist. He deserves some credit, obviously, for his work, and it was designed by Samoan tattoo artist Fred Frost. So I want to throw shout-outs because that's just super unique and super interesting, and also super kind, and just to have that in mind and to pay tribute to Hawaii and to all the people who suffered and the things that were burned down in the devastating fires. Beautiful. Well done, Utah. Awesome job. I think those are great, and I look forward to seeing those tomorrow.
There's a couple of things. Either you have it, and sometimes you can be taught it, but I think it's either you can sing or you can't, or you can draw or have artistic ability like that. Very rarely do you see somebody create themselves into an artist. There are classes that can help you, but man.
Well, it's cool to see. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's cool to see the picture of just all the helmets laid out, and him just kind of going across. But also, like, I only touched on the surface of like the details in this. If you're actually more interested, go to KSL Sports, and they've got a write-up on it. Or I'm sure UniWatch probably does at this point. But there's even more details, like all the islands are represented from the Polynesian islands. It's like there's all kinds of stuff. So that's very, very cool. So yeah, shout out to Fred Frost and everybody else that I mentioned for creating those.
They play at home against Iowa State. That game is tomorrow night at 6:30 on Fox.
And for those that don't know, with Utah being in their first year in the league, they do this. This is like a somewhat new tradition. They've been doing this since 2016. So they started that in 2016, the helmet theme, and they've done that, I guess, now the last 4 years. Didn't do it the COVID year, so the last every year since 2016 outside of the COVID year, they've had this type of helmets or nods to their culture. So, yeah, that's just another thing to learn about the new member of the Big 12 and some of the things. Like we got the Holy War first time a couple weeks ago, and there's just things that start to become new. So that's something you can pay attention to each year now.
We showed earlier
just to come on your artist thing. It's like being fast. Like you can be like kind of fast and get a little faster, but if you're like Michael Johnson, you were born fast. Like you were, and you get faster by practice.
What separates you is there's a certain level of everybody or people who have that speed, but then to get to his level, it takes
like there are some people that Like, he was born with a baseline 4.7. Like, he was never going to be slower in his life than 4.7, and then he worked at it to become like the fastest dude in the
world.
So,
his record's held for years.
I know we're going to get to another one here. They also do. It's not just strictly like Polynesian culture, but they've done like nods to just every part of Utah culture. So you've seen different like war helmets and Native American nod helmets. So I like that they've got like a whole scope, like one program we're about to get to here in just a second, I do believe.
And then, in fact, we showed you earlier this week what Army is unveiling or did unveil for their game against Navy in the second weekend of December. Here is the Navy helmet against Army. It's a helmet Ensign Jack Ernie would be proud of. This year's helmet is a blend of past and present, featuring the iconic VF-84 design with distinctive chevrons placed at the forefront, sides of the helmet, with a stripe running along the back. The white, while the helmet's white base coat represents VFA 103's current helmet, and there we are with what Navy has. Those two, the uniforms. I even if I maybe thought one, I'm not. If one of them I thought was a little gaudy, I wouldn't. It's Navy, it's Army, and they always seem to do this just so well.
I think that the designers, especially with some of the uniform changes we've seen, I know these are Under Armour for Navy, but I feel like when I see like Nike that they like spent all their time like working on Army uniforms or something, right? Because they're so intricate and detailed, and then you see like some of the new uniforms that are all like the same set, they're just different colors. Like these are uniforms that like time was taken, like a whole year was taken to just like interview people and read history books. And like, I mean, the amount of intricacy in these uniforms every year for both Army and Navy, hats off to their designers. And I think they hit it on both sides pretty perfectly pretty much every year. I don't ever get like, that's horrific looking or that's way too gaudy. I feel like it's just the right amount of like cool-S and like tradition, and I don't know. I think they're both awesome this year, but I think they're both awesome pretty much every year. But yeah, those Navy look really, really sharp. The Jolly Rogers on the Navy uniforms are awesome, and yeah, that's one of the best parts of the college football season is seeing what Navy and Army are going to throw down when they get ready to play each other uniform-wise.
The VFA 103, and some of you who have served, some of you who have been in, whether it's the Marines, the Army, the Navy, Air Force, or even maybe Navy SEALs, whatever it might be. Strike Fighter Squadron 103, nicknamed the Jolly Rogers, which was brought up in the chat room, an aviation unit of the United States Navy established in 1953. That was the year before my dad graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis.
Yeah, and we also have the Army uniforms. I know we showed them the other day, but just in case you missed that, just for comparison, these are in honor of the 101st Airborne, made extremely famous by
Band of Brothers.
Yeah, by Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
And you see the patch that says Bastogne, which I would say that's the best 2 episodes when they're in Bastogne. I think it's 2 episodes that it goes over. I think that's the only place that's like over the same place in 2 episodes as Bastogne.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I'm trying to think now.
Like
I know there's one main episode where they're in the woods.
It's
and
like
it's
an episode
crazy.
and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
But and because
it's when Jimmy Fallon makes a random cameo. He pulls up to let
in
them
a Jeep, to like give them some stuff and then like helps them. Yeah, but they but the Bastogne part of the war there was so key because these dudes just sat in foxholes and for a while took on heavy artillery while waiting for us to be able to come back with our heavy artillery and take Bastogne back. And they sat there for months in the cold in these awful foxholes with only like a week off at a time. Like
I couldn't have done it, man.
It was.
I couldn't have done it.
It was the.
I'm not built for that.
I think if you ask any like Army historian, like if you had to rank the top 10, like that was a gutsy thing that they did. Easy Company and the 101st in those foxholes in Bastogne was really one of the most unbelievable things. So I love it when they do this every year and we get to learn a little bit more about history.
I know that you guys aren't always in the chat, and I'm on it occasionally, but watching those of you who serve go back and forth, Screaming Eagles, Paxton says slight lean to Navy, Rendezvous with Destiny, and other responses that are in the chat room about the Army and Navy and the traditions, of course, and the heroes from either one.
Well, in a sport where people get caught up on like the old tradition a lot of times, I like the tradition that is pretty present day of them outdoing each other with uniforms, but making them like mean something. It's not just like, what can we throw a stripe that means nothing on a helmet or a glossy coat of paint? Or it's like everything has a meaning to it, has a history to it. This is the best uniform battle in college sports that I'm aware of, at least. And just the history aspect of it, yeah, it's very cool. And I watch Band of Brothers probably once a year, off and on. Like I watch it probably in total once a year. So yeah, the Bastogne episode where they really focus on it is still good TV, still holds up really well like 25 years later. But yeah, those are awesome. Can't wait to watch that game tomorrow. And obviously there's some big on-the-field stakes. They won't just look cool, but Army's trying to stay unbeaten and ruin the college football playoff for some teams. So that's a big part of tomorrow as well.
The old Barn Cat, go K-State, they go to the Naval Academy, which, yes, in Annapolis, and they are midshipmen until they decide to go into the Navy or Marines. So thank you all for some of the history that we got from you, also from those of you who served. We do appreciate that. The Bronco Nagurski finalists for the best defensive players in America: Jahdae Barron, Texas; Abdul Carter, Penn State; Mason Graham, defensive tackle, Michigan; and Kyle Kennard, who I brought up yesterday, the edge rusher from South Carolina. Those are the 4 finalists, and that will eventually be a ballot that we all get, eventually vote, and move on to see who is going to be the one who is named this year's Nagurski Award winner.
Yeah, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. Like, that's a tough list.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty big year for Jahdae Barron. I mean, he's also a Jim Thorpe Award semifinalist, first Nagurski finalist in, I think, 10 years for Texas. The last one, if I read earlier correctly, was Malcolm Brown. So that's a pretty high honor just to be in the race and a finalist for one of those 2 awards and maybe a finalist for the other as well. We'll see. But, yeah, he's a really good player and was a Baylor commit at one point in time. That was a flip to Texas. So they've had their history of those, and those guys have been off and on as far as how they've panned out. But Jahdae Barron has certainly panned out very well for Texas.
Craig just used the word flip, so let's do this, Garrett, if you can. Let's go to the stories that happened with college quarterbacks or future college quarterbacks, including yesterday evening, Kevin Sperry, who's played at 3 different high schools in his career, most recently at Geyer High School in Denton. He had been committed to Brent Venables for a long time, has changed his mind. He now, last night, flipped to Florida State. He was the longest commit in the Brent Venables class of 25, and he was at Carl Albert for a year after being at Rock Hill High School in Texas for 2 years, and now at Geyer. Oklahoma loses a quarterback, and this has been like a rotating chairs or whatever you want to say, because Florida State lost their quarterback to Florida. LSU just lost theirs, of course, to Michigan. Colorado got Lewis, who was USC, who then got the one who was committed to A&M.
Yeah, long street there. I think a lot of this might show that FSU might be going after Kevin Johns, who used to work with Mike Norvell for their offensive coordinator job. I don't know that. But Kevin Sperry, he's a 3-star prospect on On3. He's a 4-star on Rivals. If you ask any FSU site, he's an 11-star prospect. I don't know. He's Peyton Manning and Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray all rolled into one, whatever, and he's a really good high school player. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, these things are to keep going on. I do know this: he's not going to start for Florida State. He might start for Florida State next year. God, it's been so bad. But
are you sure about that?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably not going to start for Florida State next year. They're going to get a portal player, but Mike Norvell needed to flip something and have some good news because most people have been decommitting. They're going to lose a big lineman. They've already lost a wide receiver that was friends with Tramble Jones. So,
Yeah, it's the merry-go-round is what I probably should have said. Garrett Ross is back. Garrett was so upset about it.
Can I, as an Oklahoma fan, say something?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Garrett.
We didn't want him anyways.
Yeah.
Want him anyways.
That's what you get, right? I mean, that is what you get. So do they have anybody else committed to them right now, a quarterback, which is a position right now that they have to be wondering what in the what has happened to us after Dylan Gabriel left and Jackson Arnold had a bad year and then took his place. He didn't have a good year. Anybody they got locked in their class?
Not that so we'll see what happens, but I don't know. I hadn't been following like super closely here of late. Just been too busy with work and everything else to really get into the weeds on much recruiting class stuff, although that's starting to obviously matriculate a lot more as we get closer to National Signing Day. So I think maybe there's some blurbs here and there, but again, I haven't spent much time on the message boards for anybody really, so I don't know how much of a conversation there was. I'll just say it from my standpoint. I don't really think it matters all that much in the grand scheme of things with Brent Venables right now. Like, it does, but it doesn't. Like, for one, he's not playing soon at Oklahoma anyways, because you got to figure out your two guys that you've got right now. And Hawkins and Arnold, about what's going to happen with those guys, what's going to happen with your offensive coordinator position. You know, that's all stuff that's far more important right now than the freshman signee at quarterback who's not going to start right away. So, I mean, I'm sure it's being taken differently depending on where you look. But for me, as an Oklahoma fan who's not into the weeds on all of that, I think they've got quarterbacks on the team right now that are priority. And I think that the offensive coordinator position and the whole offensive identity trumps the high school signee. And especially in this era, this isn't sour grapes, but in this era, like, you're still get a transfer quarterback. I mean, it's not like the biggest thing in the world, but it's still a loss. So good flip for Florida State.
Before Garrett says anything, and because we forgot the super chat yesterday, retired stockbroker, whose house? Thank you very much. $2 super chat, as he will be fired up for that game
house
tomorrow night. The Cougars and the Baylor Bears in Houston. Garrett Ross was off. His son had a dentist appointment. I think he was kind of preemptively getting out of the
message
way.
Boards.
Yeah,
he knew it was coming.
He and Mike Scarborough, who was going to join us at 4 something.
Sam's ready to go, but we do have to get Garrett's opinion about this.
Garrett, what was it like for you when you heard this was official?
It was a blow. It sucked, honestly. The more I thought about it, the madder I got. And not at Bryce Underwood himself. I do not blame him for taking that money. Hats off to you. Go be great at Michigan. You are a Michigan cat through and through. It's frustrating that this is where we're at, and that you can have people who run companies and own, I don't know, NFL teams come out and just buy players now away from you. It kind of sucks where we're at. But at the same time, I don't know bigger picture what this means for LSU, because I feel like they don't have the money to compete in it consistently in a pay-for-play era, whereas programs like Michigan and programs like Texas and A&M, who just have gobs of money, I think they could do that. I think Oklahoma and LSU, really all of our teams, are going to kind of find out what they are really made of in this new landscape. It's frustrating. I wish Bryce the best, but LSU is in a world of hurt right now, trying to figure out where the hell they go from here.
That's saying quite a bit. Sam Kahn does join us from theathletic.com. Is he on with us?
Yeah, he is.
Sam, that says quite a bit, doesn't it, when LSU, a fan like Garrett, feels like that they're not set up for the NIL era when they are a big blue blood type program?
Yeah, it does. And I think it speaks to the problem of outsourcing payment of athletes, because this is an NIL issue, or it's a booster issue, because you're saying essentially your boosters don't have the money to do it. Now, when we start getting direct payments in the rev share era, I would suspect that LSU would be able to do that, would be able to account for that, just because of they're going to get as much more revenue than any other school out there, except for Texas or Ohio State or a few of those others, because they're part of the SEC in that big broadcast contract. So I think when things shift over, I don't know how much it will change, but I do think it will change a significant amount, especially for those schools that are the blue bloods or the power programs in those big conferences, because they're going to have the money coming in from a media rights standpoint. So I think you'll see some adjustment to that. And I'll be curious to see how this clearinghouse works with the NIL part of it. But to your point, yeah, it's frustrating that we're at a point right now where your ability to land a recruit is partially or heavily dependent on whether or not your boosters can pay for them. That's not where we should be right now.
Do you think that there are untapped reservoirs at LSU? And we'll ask Mike Scarborough later, but do you think this might help them get some of those untapped reservoirs now that you said, hey, we lost this dude to Michigan? Like, this is going to keep happening unless you step up.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of their booster situation, but there's nothing that motivates quite like losing, right? I think back to a program like SMU as an example. I remember when Sonny Dykes was there and they were trying to do certain things from a facility standpoint. And then when he left for the rival school at TCU, all of a sudden the booster enthusiasm went through the roof. And all of a sudden you got this end zone facility built. And then when the NIL era started, you got a lot of money invested in there. And so if you want to win bad enough and you have evidence of here's how we lost in this battle, we need people to step up. I think it absolutely can be a motivator.
Sam, you are the techspert. We've seen a couple of coaches get some new contracts here in the last 24 hours. G.J. Kinney at Texas State, Rhett Lashley at SMU. Both have obviously earned those, but I do think there's some years where that can be kind of performative, to kind of cut off the pursuit. It seems like this is going to be kind of a quiet offseason in college football as far as head coaching goes, but your thoughts on what those two have done for those programs and them getting rewarded for it here in the last 2 days?
Yeah, Lashley's a no-brainer. I mean, took him to the conference title last year, has him in position to win another one this year in a new conference. That accomplishment to me is remarkable, and I think is really one of the undersold, underrated storylines of this year. If you would have asked me if SMU was going to be an ACC title contender at the start of the year, I would have told you were crazy, because you guys saw it last year with the schools that went from the American to the Big 12. It is really hard to go from a Group of 5 conference to a Power 5 conference when you're talking about the level of talent that you need to do it. But it's a testament to the roster construction that Rhett Lashley and his staff have done over time and getting that roster ready for this schedule. And the ACC being a little bit down helps, certainly, but it's still not an easy thing to do, to be sitting here first place in the conference. So well-deserved on his part, and because he would have been a hot commodity for any Power Conference program that would have had an opening. And G.J. Kinney, I think they're a little bit – they're not as good as we thought they were going to be. I think a lot of us had pegged them as potential Sun Belt champion, potential playoff team if things broke right for them. They're not quite to that, but they are going to a bowl game again, back-to-back years. Obviously, they'd never been to a bowl game before G.J. got there, and I think he's continuing to push that program forward. So no reason to risk losing him to anybody else. I think he's obviously one of the lower paid coaches, at least when he first got there to Texas State. He got a raise last year from $800,000 to $1 million. I don't know. I haven't seen what this one is, but getting him, making the effort to keep him is good for the future of that program, because this is the first real taste of success that Texas State has had in their 12 years in the FBS.
Yeah, I think he's getting $2 million a year now. 7
really?
years,
Wow.
$14 million.
Good.
Yeah. I'd take it.
Getting close to that Jeff Traylor money.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hey, speaking of which, how about the UTSA Roadrunners? They make a little bit of a comeback here down the stretch?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think we all saw them and wondered what were they going to be without Frank Harris. And then when they struggled so badly at the start of the season, you're like, well, this is a team that only could win with their one quarterback. And I think you got to give Jeff Traylor and those coaches a lot of credit. They have fought. They've endured a lot of injuries, a lot of setbacks, and they have continued to fight. They've continued to show up every week, and he's got them in position to go back to a bowl game, and I think that'll be a remarkable accomplishment. It's not where they want to be. They certainly would like to be a lot better than that, but I think it's a testament to the job that him and the staff have done just to keep those guys in the mix, because they were absolutely left for dead at the midway point of the season.
Yeah, and his quarterback, good feature I saw written by Mike Craven on Owen McCowan, who's Josh's son, who's given them a lift. Would you say that Lashley is overlooked when it comes to Cignetti, Sataki, maybe even Dion being in the mix, or Army's head coach when it comes to Coach of the Year?
Maybe not. I don't know. I just think SMU overall has just been undersold, even when we talk about the playoff rankings, because they're several spots behind Miami, even though the resumes are pretty comparable. And I heard you guys say it. I think Craig said it earlier this week. I do wonder if people have forgotten that SMU is in the ACC, national, because it's so new and it's so fresh, and they've just kind of quietly hummed along. They had the BYU loss early, and I think after that early loss, maybe people kind of wrote them off, and they made the quarterback change, and now they've been on fire. They haven't lost since then. But to me, I mean, you could go a number of different ways. I think Cignetti is probably the shoe-in for Coach of the Year, regardless of what happens this next two games. To have Indiana 10-0 is remarkable. But after him, yeah, I think Jeff Monken, Kalani Sitake, Rhett Lashley, all those guys are deserving to be in consideration. And I go back to Lashley it's not just a one-year thing for him. It's not like he took a 5-7 team or he took a team that was really down in the dumps. This is the culmination of a program that he has been building and has done it in the transition to a tougher conference. That to me is because Kalani's turning it around from a 5-7 team the first year in the Big 12, which is terrific. But Rhett has been doing this, won a conference championship, and then does something that very few programs do. Very few programs succeed in their first year in a better, tougher conference. And to do that right away is really impressive.
Sam, A&M and Auburn this week, on paper, A&M should trash Auburn. Auburn's not good. Like, they're not a good team. Vegas sees this as a 2.5-point spread. A&M's not really ever played well in Jordan-Hare. I mean, not many people do, even though Auburn's been really bad this year. How does A&M avoid the trap that has been Auburn, especially looking ahead to next week, which is going to be crazy, and not take themselves out of the college football playoff race before what would be the most important A&M Texas game in history if they're both meeting with a chance to go to the SEC title game?
Yeah, I think you just got to do what you've been doing, which is play really good defense, take care of the football, move the football in the run game. I'll be honest with you, and this is where Vegas, this is why they make money, and this is why I'm sitting here talking about stuff. I don't see it. I don't see why this game spread is so small. I don't understand. I mean, I guess could A&M players be overlooking and looking ahead? Maybe. I don't really buy into that. When I watch Auburn, I just don't see it. I don't see what makes, and I get it, a road game in the SEC is always tough, but as long as Peyton Thorne is the quarterback, I'm just not buying this team. And so I don't see where they could be a big challenge. Now, if A&M comes out and sleepwalks in the first half, sure. Yeah, this could absolutely get messy. But I know they've played tight with Mizzou and they played, they kept it close. They were ahead against Oklahoma for a while, and Oklahoma ended up coming back and they beat Kentucky. But I just don't see it. I don't think Auburn's all that great. I think A&M's good. I'd be surprised if A&M didn't handle this game.
Sam, kind of a grab bag here. Sort of the highlights of this weekend. You've got Ohio State and Indiana, which obviously there's been a lot of talk about that. There's Notre Dame Army and the implications there. There's also that 2:30 double whammy for the Big 12 where they've got a couple of very important games and BYU, Arizona State, also Kansas, Colorado. I mentioned all that. What stands out to you this weekend? What's kind of top of mind for you as the most interesting, most important sort of storyline, and maybe one I didn't mention?
Yeah, I think the two that you mentioned, the Army Notre Dame and the Indiana Ohio State, because Army Notre Dame to me is kind of a de facto elimination game. If Army loses and they're out, if Notre Dame loses, I think it's going to be really hard for them to get in. So that one I think is going to be center stage. And then Indiana Ohio State, just because of the narrative that we've endured the last week, somehow we went from Indiana being a fun story to now everybody, including the SEC commissioner, attacking their resume. And I'll be honest, I'm sick of it. I'm tired of listening to it. Can we not just enjoy it and then let it all play out? I'm fascinated to see what kind of fight they put up against Ohio State tomorrow, especially as it compares to Penn State, because I think they're still behind Penn State in the rankings, which puzzles me because Penn State's resume really ain't that good either. And I'll be curious to see, do they play Ohio State better than Penn State did? The Big 12 one, you guys know I'm going to be watching that one. Of those two, I know everyone's focused on BYU and Arizona State, but I'm fascinated by this Colorado team. And that one to me is almost more intriguing because of how Kansas has played the last few weeks, but also because Colorado is really on the cusp of making this thing happen. And I think it's incredible when you think about where they were last year and where we were coming into this season. When Deion Sanders in January was talking about college football playoff expectations, a lot of us laughed, myself included. I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, why would you set expectations way up here for a team that went 4-8 last year? I thought he was setting them up for failure, but the joke's on me and the joke's on all of us who doubted him, because they did a much better job of stocking that roster. And we talked about this in the offseason. I talked to people across the country and across the conference about what they did in the portal. And I heard a lot of people tell me that they thought, you know what? Colorado did a sneaky good job in the portal of getting guys, not just going to get guys, but getting really good quality players that fit that filled needs that they had. And it's playing out because some of the drama that we saw last year with the staff and the midseason change on the offense and all that stuff is gone. They've been quiet. It hasn't been boastful. It hasn't been a lot of look at me. It has been going out there, playing damn good football and winning football games. And I'm really, really impressed by it.
Yeah, we had Brian Howell on, who covers them from the Daily Camera yesterday. And I asked him about, it seemed like it's been more, it just hasn't been a lot of glitz and glamour and a lot of like Rolexes or whatever. It really has just been about football. And I think that they all kind of huddled together and said, hey, let's go play football. And the defense has been really, really good as well. Sam, great to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great weekend watching some great football.
Thank you. Y'all too. Have a good one.
Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, with us on Fridays at 3:30 here on 365 Sports. Yeah, that's the second person this week, along with what we have as our own opinion, that they just put their heads down and went straight into the storm and got better. Got better with Colorado.
I think it would be hilarious if Indiana beat Ohio State by like 17. What would happen if they just turned around and just whooped them? And, I mean, that would be, I think, the most hilarious, entertaining possible outcome this entire weekend would be Indiana rolling in and just drubbing the Buckeyes, which I know is very unlikely. But, boy, would that turn some things on its head. Certainly a lot of opinions on its head.
For the sake of college football moving forward, whether they win or not, Indiana, it would be great to just see the reactions to it.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not really thinking like, man, that means that Indiana would get this. No, I'm thinking just like of all the talk about them this week, if they were to roll out there and be like, we haven't played anybody, huh?
Yep.
And then just go beat the Buckeyes by like 3 scores, that would be freaking hilarious.
If they just beat them straight up, beat them, yeah.
I do think that the playoff is kind of taken away, though, from some of the later week games now, though. I think that is starting to happen. So if you were looking at the impact on the regular season, like we all predicted what we thought it would be like, and we all wondered what it would be like, and we've all learned week by week of how, the effect the playoff has had. And I do think here in this last month of the season, it has like become less about who's who playing this Saturday. Like there are games that matter, like Indiana, Ohio State, that Big 12 double whammy at 2:30. Like those games still all matter. But as far as the conversation goes, so much of it's about, what if so-and-so goes on? It's like, who they play this weekend? Can we see what happens there first?
Let them play.
Yeah, but that's just part of like a 24/7 conversation and just, the fandom of college football, or any other fandom for that matter. That's just how it goes. But that has been a side effect that I've seen with this expanded playoff.
There will be you still will find because that's just the way it is. Okay, when we come back, Grayson Grunhafer, Baylor's on a 4-game winning streak, and obviously on the road against Houston. We will check in with the Big Ten with Kenneth Davis, Josh Neighbors on many things college football, and also the Four Corners pod in the Big 12. We'll have that, plus Mike Scarborough on what has been a tough run for LSU, even when it comes to recruiting. And this is 365 Sports. Do Petty here, Paul? Do Petty? PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. If you have any of these symptoms, your focus is not the same, your energy is down, your sex drive is pretty much non-existent, and you are also experiencing ED. If any of those symptoms are a part of you, it could be your testosterone level gotten too low, part of father time. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Maybe that is you. Dr. Kent Petty, go to PettyClinicLowT.com. Contact them. There's an email. There's also a way to contact them through the website. And you can call and say, hey, I have what Smokey was talking about, some of these symptoms, and I have been told you can help me out. Now, it may not be your testosterone, but it could be too. So why don't you find out? He and they will set you up to get your blood work. They'll take care of that for you. Get the results. Dr. Petty will look at them, and if your testosterone level is dropped, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be. PettyClinicLowT.com.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Another so-so pizza from So-So's Pizza? But wait, there's Marco's! Our new triple pepperoni Magnifico pizza is stacked with classic, crispy cupped, and new bold shredded pepperoni. It's triple the flavor, and only at Marco's. Just $11.99.
I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. Forever we'll be singing like, oh, I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. Forever we'll be singing like, oh, I'll never get used to this.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Don't miss our best price deals during the Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels. This month, save big on the truck you've been looking for, like the new Rams. Shop our great selection of inventory in-store or online today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
David Smoak and Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. Also today in studio, Emery Winter and Garrett Ross on a Friday. Take you up until 6 o'clock. Grayson Grundhafer, Sickham365.com, 365 Sports. Grayson, thanks for your time. So with the announcement, that was not a surprise, but it was an announcement about Dave Aranda back for next year, which 2 or 3 weeks ago we didn't know. I saw there was an article about how the reaction of the recruits, did they all feel like he was coming back and they didn't think that was new, or how did they react to it?
Right. I mean, I think it's one of those feelings where it's what they had been talking about all summer, right? You know, they'd gone on these official visits and talked to the coaching staff, and the coaching staff has been very honest with them throughout this entire process. And I think that's kind of why you saw in so many of the comments of it being no surprise, right? But I think it was more because they saw the vision that Dave Aranda and the staff laid out, and then they've accomplished that vision. And so I think that's where the positive reactions are to it and why there wasn't a ton of surprise in it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't worried coming into the year. I mean, all these guys who were recruited by Baylor understood that this season was a big season for Baylor and that they had to win games and that Dave Randon needed to win games in order for this thing to kind of keep rolling, in order for this class to stay together, in order for this program to, kind of ride this wave of momentum that they had all off season. And so that's kind of, I think, what you saw come together after it was announced that Aranda would be back for next season.
Grayson, this game this week is interesting in that, Houston has had their moments. I mean, they just beat Kansas State a couple weeks ago. They beat TCU. They can get their dander up, and they can go and get you. I think for them, the way Baylor's offense is playing, this is a bad matchup. But Baylor's not exactly the purple people eaters out there on defense from the 70s Vikings. That they're probably going to give us some big plays. What do you think is the big thing that they have to do to make sure that Houston doesn't, get that feeling that they had against Kansas State or against TCU?
I think that there's reasons to be concerned about the way Baylor has played defensively, and there's reasons to be, a little bit maybe pessimistic about how they've played offensively. But I think in general, the important things to remember throughout this season are that when Baylor's played bad offenses, which unequivocally Houston is a bad offense, they're the worst offense in the Big 12 by a mile. When Baylor's played teams like that, they've played really well. And so you look at the second half against Utah, which they got to play the backup quarterback, and that's a bad offense. You look at the Air Force game, you look at the Charleston State game. Those are the three bad offenses they faced this year, and they really dominated all three of those. And so it leads you into this game thinking that the defense should absolutely have one of, if not their best performance of the season on Saturday. Now, as far as the offense goes, I think you look at the teams that they've played and you say they've played some bad defenses and taken advantage of that. And that's fine to say, but I would also say that there's a difference between taking advantage of that and being, I think they're in the top 3 in scoring offense over the last month. And so there's a difference between just taking advantage of it and absolutely dominating against these teams. And 2 of those teams are bowl eligible, and West Virginia, I'm expecting them to make a bowl too. So during this stretch, they haven't exactly played the worst teams in the Big 12 either. So I think some of those numbers can be skewed, but I think in general going into this matchup, I think Baylor's defense should be feeling pretty confident that they're going to be able to get some stops. And at this point, I feel like the offense doesn't believe that anyone can hold them below 30 points. And so that's kind of how I view this game going into it. I think Baylor's playing with a lot of confidence, and I think Houston is one of those teams that if they get you on the perfect day, they can beat you. But also if you see Houston on a bad day, you're going to beat them by 3 or 4 scores, as we've seen multiple times this year for Willie Fritz and company.
Grayson, what has been the biggest surprise to you? I mean, you're somebody who thought we all thought they'd be better just by default because of all the changes, like they kind of had to be based on last year. But to what degree was up for debate? You thought they'd be like an 8-4 type of team. So you obviously expected a lot of this, but maybe what's something you haven't seen or something you have seen that you did not expect that you've been impressed by?
So in fairness, Craig, when I did my preseason predictions, I did have them going 6-6 in the regular season. So I still, that's kind of where I was at, along with most people. I
was trying to give you some credit there. I was trying to give you a little extra bump, but
and I appreciate that, but I it's so public that I want to make sure that people know kind of where my expectations were. And it was 6-6, and it has been pretty much all year. Even when they were 2-4, there was a path there. They had to get through the Texas Tech game in order to get there, and they did that. And so now they're at where they're at, right? And I think my general thought coming into this season was that I felt like the offense was going to be better than the defense this year. And I think we all kind of had different takes on that, whether, one side would be better than the other. Would it be the defense with Aranda? Would it be this offense with Jake Spavital coming in? And I kind of settled on thinking the offense would take a big step forward and the defense would be improved, but still not quite where they want it. And I think that's kind of bared out. And the offense has obviously performed way better than my expectations. At this point, it's hard to argue with, more than maybe 1 or 2 offenses in the Big 12 being better than Baylor's is right now. My expectation was that they'd be, in the top 6 or so, but not where they are currently. And so that's been a very nice surprise. I think in general, though, the biggest surprise for me was the way this offensive line has improved. I mean, Sora Robertson's great. I think we all saw the flashes of him last year, and in this scheme that he was very comfortable with, it's not shocking to see him playing well. I think the receivers are veteran-laden. They got a lot of guys who've been around a long time, and so you felt like that would come together as well. You had some intriguing options at running back, but I think the biggest question we all had was, what would this offensive line look like? And could they get to Big 12 average? And in my eyes, over this month or 5-game stretch, I believe they're a top 3 offensive line in the Big 12 at this very moment. And it has been shocking and so impressive that Mason Miller, Jake Sabatol, Dave Aranda, they're able to find the right guys, find the right pieces, put it all together, and make these massive improvements from what we saw at the beginning of the year to where they're at now. And quite frankly, I think that completely changed their season.
Grayson, last thing, and yeah, the switch to Fugarda left tackle seemed like it just kick-started this unbelievable chemistry in what they're doing. Bryson Washington was a great running back in high school at Franklin, still somewhat overlooked. Did you ever expect him to be as good as he's been this year?
Right. So it's actually interesting. If you go back and look at the SICM 365 recruiting rankings, in his class, I believe he was tied for my top rated recruit in that class. So yeah, to answer your question, I did definitely believe in him. But it is interesting because when I evaluated him based on the premise that he'd be running in the wide zone scheme. And I felt like he fit that scheme really well. Everything that I saw from Franklin kind of told me, okay, I think he's going to be able to find gaps and then power through those gaps. He ran with great power in high school, broke tackles. And obviously, his speed is translated to the college level as well, which I do think was a question on him coming out. But now you see him in this scheme. And it was really interesting because over the offseason, it really felt like the staff, this new staff, felt like he would be a great fit for the inside zone. And we heard tons of rumblings about what he did during practices, posted it on SICM 365. I think Colt and I were pretty clear, like, this guy was their starting running back at the beginning of the year, but he missed the first 2 games. And when he got back into that role, it was very clear, who the alpha is in that room. And he's ran with it. He has been awesome. He's a perfect fit for what they're trying to do in this offense. And then when you have a guy like that, and then you also have Dawson Pendergrass, who is just continuing to impress every week as well, you have a very nice 1-2 punch. And it's just been super impressive as a whole. And as this offensive line got going, those 2 guys got going as well.
Thank you, Grayson. Appreciate it. Grayson Grunhafer, SICM365.com and 365 Sports. And college football recruiting, Baylor recruiting, but others too along the way.
Yeah, I'm interested in this game tomorrow. I think, I've been pretty out front about thinking Baylor's going to win this game the entire week. I haven't had any reason to really budge from that, but I do know there's that trap of going to a place and they're rowdy. They're wearing their Houston blue. They're decked out with those towels and the new uniforms, and it's just a big game. If Baylor wins this game, they will have completed the Texas sweep. They will have beaten TCU, which they hardly ever do. They've done once in the last decade, now twice. They will have gone to Lubbock and beat Texas Tech and then beat Houston. So that's not something any of the other 3 will obviously have been able to do because 2 of them lost and 1 will be decided tomorrow, but all 3 don't even play the other 3. So that's a unique title that Baylor could kind of take this year, is getting that full Texas sweep within the Big 12. But, yeah, I expect Houston will have their sleeves rolled up and they'll be ready to, slap pads and get after it. But I do think based on everything we've seen, Baylor balance-wise is a better team.
I don't know if they've ever beaten West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Tech in the same year. Even those teams that were really, really good. I'd go back to a couple of those teams.
2014 lost to West Virginia and Morgantown.
Right. And then, of course, you had the Bryce Petty team that tripped on the 7-yard line. And so
one team lost to Oklahoma State in regular season.
Yep. Well, the 2021.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, and then they won the game up in Arlington. When we come back, we'll look at the 4 Corners pod. We break down the Big 12 into 4 clumps of 4, and they all kind of wrap together, including Utah, Colorado. It's also, of course, Arizona and Arizona State. That is next, and this is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club, man, they've had a couple of great events this week. including one that was that, Friendsgiving, where they had phenomenal food available for those who wanted to get together to enjoy Thanksgiving food, even though it's a week from yesterday, but also enjoy the amenities of the Baylor Club inside of McLean Stadium. Celebrate with what they have coming up. Members Holiday Party on December the 5th. Enjoy the festive fun, delicious treats, and holiday cheer. Bring a toy to Shepherd's Heart and spread joy to those who need that during the holiday season. They are ones that, of course, put together opportunities to get meals delivered to families that don't have that ability. So you can do that by contributing, by going to the Baylor Club coming up on December the 5th. And you know the food is fantastic. It is delicious. It is really, really nice. And if you have any kind of banquets or dinners or any kind of a gala or what it might be and you need a place to host it, they do that. They are fantastic at that. We do it every year in May when we honor senior student athletes in Greater Central Texas. Mike Mosel, the general manager. Memberships available. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium in Waco off I-35 in the Brazos River.
Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford. Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue, cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
All right, we do pods. And the Four Corner Pods today includes Utah and Colorado. Both teams are completely the opposite of what a lot of people expected, not everybody, and then, of course, Arizona and also Arizona State. So let's start with the Four Corners. At the very top, Colorado and Arizona State are both in the middle of this. Colorado will start with Dion, and the Buffaloes are red hot. They've won 4 straight. They play a dangerous game against Kansas this Saturday. Paul, Catalina, Colorado at 6-1 in the conference, 8-2 overall.
Yeah, this is kind of the definition of a trap game, because when you get to seeing your goal of being in the Big 12 title game right in front of you, and you've got, normally you would see a 4-6 team and be like, there we go. But the fact is that 3 of the 4 have come right in a row now. They were 1-6, and now here they are sitting at 4-6. They just beat Iowa State. They have shown that they are now finally who we thought they were going to be. I don't know if Kansas can quite hang with the studs, but I'm here for Kobe Bryant and that secondary versus those wide receivers. I think that'll be great. I think that Jalen Daniels can get some stuff done against an effective Colorado defense, and I think that they're going to get all they want. I still think Colorado wins this, but I do think that it is not a foregone conclusion by far.
Yeah, I mean, just from a mojo perspective, Colorado is probably feeling the best of any team in the Big 12 right now. I don't think they're necessarily the hottest team, because you do have a team like Baylor, a team like Kansas that are also playing equally well at this moment. But I do think pound for pound, Colorado is in the number 1 spot right now in the Big 12. And, last week there were a couple things that kind of made you nervous initially, where, Shedeur throwing the pick right away, and you're like, oh boy, that's what you can't do against Utah. He had a fumble as well later in that game. He eventually had a really nice performance, and there were some positives. I mean, you had a big play in the run game. You had the return touchdown as well from Wester. So there was a little bit of good and bad, and some things that you hope to see more of, like more in the run game, big explosive plays in special teams, but also like, hey, Shedeur needs to protect the football. I think all that comes into play this weekend. If he protects the football, they can get the splash play outside of just their normal, big plays on offense. That would obviously tip the scales, I think, a little further in their favor. But yeah, they're playing with a team that's definitely not scared of the challenge, has gone toe-to-toe with the best in the league over the past month, and in most cases has come out as the winner on the other side of it. So they are not, I think, intimidated by Colorado. Kansas is at home. They've got a lot of confidence and momentum, but I think, Colorado is also one of the most confident and momentum-driven teams at the moment as well. I just think this sets up for a really intriguing, entertaining game. I do like Colorado still. But I do know, and I'm very well aware of the challenge that awaits them this weekend. So I imagine they are too, and I imagine they're preparing accordingly. As we heard from Brian Howell yesterday, they don't seem to be a team that's getting caught up in like, oh, we're headed for Arlington, or the Heisman's already ours. Like, they're still playing like those things have to be earned, because they do. And so that's a good sign about the culture of the team and just the mindset heading into a big game like this. So they're in a really good spot. Handle your business tomorrow, and you are sitting really pretty, but it will be a challenge for sure. And I do think they are, as far as what we've seen so far, the team that I do think can go into the playoff and maybe win a game or two from the Big 12, just because of how prolific that offense is and the fact that the defense is pretty good as well. I think their weapons, having some elite guys, does separate them a little bit, especially there at quarterback, and obviously with your Heisman candidate there.
Yeah, I do think I think Arizona State, Colorado would be a hell of a game, wouldn't it?
I do too. Yeah.
I think it'd be a hell of a game in many ways.
It's kind of what I'm rooting for, honestly.
Okay, all right. I thought Kalani was one of your buddies.
I mean, it's like I don't mind any of it.
I'm telling him next year in Las Vegas or Arlington or wherever
or next week when we have him on.
Yeah.
I mean,
on next week. No, he's probably a little busy, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, he will jump on with us. So there we are with Colorado at 8-2, and what a year it's been, with a lot of awards and high praise for many of the players, and not just the offensive players.
You could not have really written a much better script up to this point outside of winning all of your games. But, I mean, the fact that Travis Hunter is like the favorite in the Heisman conversation. We just read the mock draft the other day. I know Matt Miller's one guy out of 1,000 that have mock drafts, but to have both the top 2 picks being Shedeur and Travis Hunter, to be in the lead for the Big 12, to be in control of your own destiny, to have 10 games, if not like 11 wins out there as a possibility as well. Things are definitely going to change this offseason because guys are going to depart, but They've got a really good thing going on. I'm excited to see kind of the post-Shedeur Travis Hunter era and what that looks like. But right now, they've got some history to go out there and take in this first year back in the Big 12, and so let's see what they can do with it. But they're definitely the team riding the most momentum right now out of anybody.
4 games on the road they've won. At Colorado State, which was an emotional game in a rivalry. At UCF, when they were like, whoa, they had just won that Hail Mary game against Baylor. Won at Arizona easily and beat Tech by 14, 41-27.
Here's the one final thing on them. If they beat
I have
Kansas,
one more note about them. They've played one team inside the top 25, and that's Kansas State. They lost by 3 at home. Not their fault, but that's one of the things that when you see their overall record, there's 3 or 4 or 5 other teams in the top 25 we hear about, but that's the one note that I noticed about their schedule.
Yeah, so if you want to pick apart Indiana's resume or whoever else's resume, then that's a team that you probably need to include as well. And, if you want to really pick apart, that Baylor game, they I'm sure somebody's made that argument as well. But the thing I wanted to note is if you beat Kansas this weekend, you know who's left, right? It's Oklahoma State at home. So I think you feel really good about your shot there. So this is a big one because I think you win this one, you definitely win next week, and then you're in Arlington and you're probably the favorite and all that comes with that.
That's a great point. No question with Oklahoma State next on their schedule. All right, we go from Colorado, Arizona State. Man, what a great year it's been. A tremendous amount of momentum for them, too. The Sun Devils at home this week in a huge game against BYU. Kenny Dillingham and company are red hot.
Yeah, they are, and they're playing with swagger. They're not afraid of anybody. I love it for them. They're a year ahead of where they said they thought they would be. I think this at home with BYU, not having that bump that they normally get there, is going to help Arizona State a lot. I decided to pick Arizona State in this game. I think that they're the hotter team. I think they're playing better right now. I think that it'll be a slobber knocker of a game, but I think the Sun Devils got it.
Yeah, I think they've had a really cool 3-headed monster kind of build this season. You walked into the year and you knew, one, that they had a 1-headed monster, and his name was Cam Scadaboo. And if you knew about him, that's kind of where you started with Arizona State and the fact that, they've changed staffs recently, and Kenny Dillingham's this young up-and-comer and all of that. But, now they've made a lot more noise. A lot more people have been able to see this thing build up where now Scadaboo can look to his left, and there's Sam Levitt, a very talented young quarterback who's got a lot in front of him, and especially with Kenny Dillingham's tutelage, like the world is their oyster over there. And then the way that Jordan Tyson, who was at one point in time at Colorado, to see him emerge into the maybe 1,000-yard wide receiver. I mean, that's very much in the realm of possibility with at least 3 games to play for them, if not 4, because they do have a crack. If they win this weekend, they are suddenly going to Arlington with 1 game to play, which would be their rivalry game with Arizona. But they would leap over BYU, obviously, with the head-to-head. So this is a massive game. We know it's sold out. I think the energy is going to be just off the wall, and I think the Sun Devils be rip-roaring ready to go, and so will BYU. I think this is going to be a slobber knocker. I can't wait. I'm super excited for this game, but I've been very impressed by just Dillingham. I think you guys have heard me mention just his press conferences, and I just really enjoy listening to him. And I've enjoyed that throughout the year, especially as they've won, and that just makes everything better when you're talking about success. So I think they'll be primed and ready, but so will their opponents. So I can't wait. But, yeah, they've been a great story, one of the better stories in the league, a lot of star power on offense, and a lot of brightness when you look at the future as well because of that young coach and some of those young stars.
I love listening to him. I really, really do. I like listening to the Deion stuff, too. And, again, this year has been a lot different with how most of his press conference has gone compared to perhaps maybe earlier in the year or sometimes last year.
So you brought up the Dave Aranda quote about the Big 12 coaches, and we kind of got sidetracked because I was just talking about, I think another part of that. But pound for pound, I do think it is an incredible league for head coaches. Not just I got off on the tangent more about how everything is so even, and so it does boil down to who's got the bigger stars in some cases, those difference makers, and we got into really what he was saying about what the SEC has, edge rushers and things like that. But I do think just in general, it's a great league of head coaches. Dion, Kleiman, Aranda, Dillingham, Sataki. I mean, there's just a number of guys who are really interesting, really good coaches, and it's a cool league, and he's definitely a big rising star, and they've got a lot of electricity right now in Tempe that I think will be on display tomorrow.
And two guys that were red hot have had to go kind of struggle this year with what's going on with Chris Kleiman at K-State compared to expectations, and then Lance Leipold trying to dig them out of a ditch with 2 games left against Colorado at home and then at Baylor, 2 teams that won't be easy to beat. But they still have that door somewhat open. All right, Arizona. 2 players that have put up good numbers, but not the same. Teteroa McMillan will be an All-American, I think. He might even win the Biletnikoff Award. I'm not sure. But Arizona has been a disappointing year for them. While Arizona State, and don't you make it, that makes it even tougher, that are across the way.
It's the Utah of Arizona.
Yeah, there you go. Across the way, you have up just a little bit north of you in Tempe is this team having a remarkable year, and you have been kind of just there.
Yeah, it's I don't even like. It's hard for me to even predict how they're going to be week to week because I thought there's a really good chance they lost to Houston last week. Now they handled them 27-6, so that. Gives me a little bit of confidence that they can go out and maybe win some more games. But going to TCU, TCU's been playing a lot better. 11-point dogs in this one. I just don't know if they can hang with that offense. But TCU has been known to, kind of not show up, and I think that's kind of what Arizona has to hope for.
Well, Paul, Houston wishes they scored 6. They only scored 3.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I wanted to make that joke because, that was a tough go of things for Houston's offense, as it has been for most of the year. But that was a really good win for Arizona. Not really good in, who you beat necessarily, but just the fact that you needed a win, desperately needed to win. So you put yourself in a position where if you can finagle a win this weekend against TCU, which is certainly possible, then you have the big spoiler game, and maybe even you can get bowl eligible in that last week against Arizona State. But all eyes on this week, and I do think they have their work cut out for them. They just needed a win, like I said, and I'm going to appreciate the whole McMillan and Fafita duo as much as I possibly can these next couple of weeks because its time is running out. I mean, Teteroa McMillan is going to the NFL draft. Noah Fafita doesn't have that kind of, first of all, the size or some of that to be able to go and do that himself. But, it's been a partnership that goes back to it's not Pop Warner, I guess, where they grew up, but that's how far it goes back for them, is playing Little League football, playing high school football. Eventually, McMillan was an Oregon commit. He ends up going to Arizona with 2 of their other high school teammates, and it's a really cool story, but it's all kind of wrapping up. And you expected this to be a much better potential send-off here in 2 or 3 weeks than what it's shaped into because of this season just being a lot more of a slog than you anticipated. So there's a way to make noise. There's a way to still get in the postseason and extend those guys for another game, or it's going to get cut short, which I think no matter where you sat on Brent Brennan and the coaching change, even if you thought they were going to take a step back, I don't think you thought they wouldn't be bowl eligible. So that's been something that I think's been kind of a hard pill to swallow, but it's still out there. TCU is, to Paul's point, a team that you never really know what you're going to get. I think the shootout odds here are extremely high based on what both of these teams' strong suits are. But this ought to be interesting, and we'll see what kind of fight they have left in them here in these last couple of weeks. But it's starting to turn into the end of an era in a lot of ways.
All right, we have Mike Scarborough around the corner, but one more team we've brought him up. Utah, 6 consecutive losses. I mean, 0 for 6 after a start of 4-0 with wins against Baylor and Oklahoma State in the conference. They've lost 6 straight and in an absolute free fall as they enter this weekend, and they play Iowa State, 22nd ranked Cyclones at home, 6:30 on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think Iowa State runs all over them. I just don't see much left, in this corner of the 4 corners. I think they're cooked. Too many quarterback injuries, too.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think Iowa State's just going to run all over. I think their defense has still played well. I mean, you look at the scores and the performances, and the defense has still held them into some games, and it's just been the offense is so abysmal that it's not anything you can correct during the regular season. It's something that's going to have to get changed during this offseason that is full of question marks for them, from Kyle Whittingham's long-term future to who's on the roster next year and all those types of things. I don't think it really matters either way, because I still think Iowa State's the better team. This is in Salt Lake, but again, that hasn't really mattered much of late. Last we saw them there, they had that devastating, heartbreaking loss to BYU. But they gave Colorado a little bit of a run. Now, granted, like Shedeur fumbles right at the beginning of the game, but they gave Colorado a little bit of a test for a little while. I think they're going to fight. I think they're going to scratch and claw, but I just don't think they're good enough to beat Iowa State. Although Iowa State, guys, has not exactly been like some juggernaut.
No.
They've definitely shown some weaknesses, so it's just all a matter of like who shows up on either side. But I'd fully expect, if I had to give a prediction, loss number 7 in a row here. And then it's just a debate on, can they win a game before the season is over, which next week would be going to Orlando to take on UCF.
Yeah, two teams that would be just like absolutely
UCF might
a mess.
be playing for a bowl game, too.
Yeah, well, Utah, if they win this weekend, they will be, too.
So, yeah, exactly. So that might have a little more sauce on it than we realize. But, yeah, Utah, the most exciting thing about them is getting into the offseason pretty much at this point.
I saw where they may have flipped a quarterback commit from BYU to Utah, which is interesting. With that quarterback room the way it is, not a surprise. When we come back, we'll hear from Mike Scarborough. Tiger Bait covers LSU. And what a tough year it's been, but also a tough week. And I think they lost a wide receiver today, too, to Michigan. Meadows. This is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com just wrapped up yet another live auction. I was involved in ribeyes and fillets, and I got outbid. In fact, near the end of yesterday's show, like at 5:45, because it ends the live auction, the 2-day live auction ended a little after 6, I went in and I bumped the price of the fillets, Wagyu fillets, and also ribeyes. And I bumped the price up, and a minute later, my email popped up and my text that said, "You've been outbid." I'm like, wait a minute. I just bid. It's fun. It's competitive. It can be exhilarating, and it's unbelievable beef product at TexasBeefHouse.com, just outside of Tyler, the Duvall family, and their amazing ranch. And they have these live auctions, sometimes online, sometimes in person and online. And they have done an amazing job at changing how you can buy your beef at the price that you want to buy. If you get into an auction and you want to pay 31 or 34 or 40 pounds, $40 a pound, you get it, you pay it. If you want to do that, if you want to back away, like there was one group, a lot is what they call it, where it got a little heavy for me. I could afford it, but I was like, no, I'm going to walk away from that. And I did. Then I got involved in another lot or bid and thought I was going to probably bump it up enough to get it. Nope, I got outbid pretty quickly on that. You pay what you want to pay for Wagyu and Angus beef, whether it's steaks or roast or something else like hamburger patties, and tri-tip and more. It's the Duvall family doing it the way that no one's ever seen before at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Announcing Genco's Car Hugger Special. Right now, refinance your auto loan at Genco and get 3 months of no car payments. Plus, your loan will be automatically entered for a chance to win your next 3 car payments on us. Enjoy 5.19% for 48 months and then skip your payments until 2025. Subject to credit approval and membership eligibility. For more information, go to GencoFCU.org. Member NCUA.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION Solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. This 4 o'clock hour rolling. Now at 4:30, take you up until around 6 o'clock. We appreciate your time. If you have not hit the like button, we'd appreciate you doing that. If you haven't subscribed, we'd love for you to do that too. And someone who has a great, great site, Tiger Bait, Mike Scarborough, our good friend, covers LSU across the board and joins us on 365 Sports. How bad of a couple of days has it been for Brian Kelly and his recruiting class?
It has not been good. Look, obviously a 3-game losing streak. Look, I think there was a juncture in the middle of the football season where there was a little bit of fool's gold, and LSU fans thought the season was going to head into a direction that was much better than the team's ability. So 3 straight losses, and Bryce Underwood, a 5-star quarterback, number 1 in the country, prized possession in their recruiting class for a year. To lose him with 14 days left until signing day is absolutely a big blow. And it's been a fantastic recruiting class. And it still can be, but you don't lose a guy like that this late. It's just I'm told that it's been like a funeral home around the football facility since they got word yesterday. And we get Brian Kelly on Thursday afternoons after practice, where he discusses how the week of prep has been for the upcoming opponent this week, Vanderbilt. And he sure was extra sarcastic and little riled up. And I think within minutes, or some say it happened actually 2/3 of the way through his post-practice press conference, that the word leaked out that Underwood had flipped to Michigan. So I think he knew ahead of time, and that's why he was in the mood he was in. And now it's LSU's quarterback room has a big question mark, like many other positions on this LSU football roster going forward.
Mike, how much, guys have different reasons for why they do things, and obviously the financial piece is bigger than ever, but like how much onus do you put on LSU for not being able to close this deal, and how much is just like, hey, Michigan came through with this and he's from there, like all that. So like how much blame is being put on Kelly and staff for something like this?
Man, I really think it's just the bottom line. It's an NIL deal. And
gotcha.
Look, I got a pretty good idea of the numbers from sources. And I'm telling you right now, there's no other quarterback in the country that's committed for the class of 25 that has as lucrative of a deal that LSU had on the table for Bryce Underwood. The problem is crazy good and as lucrative as that one was, Michigan came in and blew past it by millions.
Wow.
And
Wait
I mean, what are you going to do?
Millions, plural?
Yes.
Old Dave Portnoy, huh?
Stephen Ross, too.
Stephen Ross, the whole gang, yeah.
Yeah, it got to the point, I'm told, at the end where it was just like, look, we're not even, the family was just kind of like, we're not going to keep giving you a higher amount, and you have to, it got to the point where it was beyond, and LSU did everything. I mean, he was in for an official visit a couple of weeks ago. They had a local restaurant that was shut down. totally catered to he and his family. And I mean, look, he came down here. I mean, double digit probably visits down here unofficially. Everybody that does what I do in the local LSU media was like me and thought that LSU was going to make it to the finish line. And they didn't. And the number that LSU was, I'm told the number that LSU was at for him for a package for multi-years in Baton Rouge was $10 million. And Michigan went well beyond that.
Oh my God! I really hope that's not true across the board, but it wouldn't surprise me. I've always thought the numbers were silly and maybe just out of the, but that would not surprise me anymore. No.
Yeah.
Well, I liken it to a scenario where, you know, if you're a guy that if you've ever bid on anything on eBay, you're just sitting there waiting on an auction, and you know if you put a bid in and with 30, 45 seconds left, and you put in the right amount, you're going to win it. And they came in with their last ditch effort, and they got him. And they're absolutely sick because, you know, there's a couple of quarterbacks that we feel that are probably going in the portal for LSU backups. And I didn't think they were going to take a quarterback at all for 26 with Underwood coming in. And then you've got a nice group in Louisiana with offers for 27. Now, and then look, Nussmeier has not performed very well in the last couple of games, but there's still an outside shot. He might decide to go pro. What if he does that? It could really be a disaster. So they're going to need at least one quarterback in the portal.
Mike, do you think that LSU has a fully fleshed out, I mean, because they had the money, do you think this maybe brings some people off the sidelines to get them some more NIL money, or are they pretty much tapped into all the wells that they can be tapped into?
Look, I think if you talk to anybody that's in the NIL space at LSU, I don't think they're ever going to say they have too much money. They're always going to say they need more, but they're also never going to say we're poor and we can't afford it. That's not anything that you would want out there. But I know with Bryce Underwood committed, they also had a really nice war chest for Austin Thomas to go out and spend some money in the transfer portal on many other positions that they have needs for. So I don't think LSU's out of the realm of possibility. But what are you going to do when a couple of business folks come together and say, we really got to have this guy and we're not going to let him get away, and they break the bank for it. And, you know, look, it's – I mean, I talked about it on our show last night. We did an impromptu show about it. And, like, man, let's say NIL had come into effect in 2018 and in 2019, all those guys, Burrow, Chase, Jefferson, Hilaire, Patrick Queen, and others were all just sophomores. If you give Joe Burrow $15 million, what are you going to give Jamar Chase? What's Justin Jefferson going to expect? You know, it can create crazy dissension in your locker room, and at some point, you got to walk away. Kim Mulkey was involved with the top recruit in the country. That number got to be $1.5 million, and which is crazy, and walked away, and they put that money towards 3 other top tier players, and that's the way you got to do it. And but it's I assure you, Joe Sloan, LSU's offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, he's probably having a hard time keeping food down right now.
So, Mike, Vanderbilt upcoming. What's the feeling about on the field, or what's the feeling like on the field, I should say, with the Tigers and just all that's going on right now?
Yeah, it's a must win. They cannot go to a 7-5 this year and going into a marginal bowl. In fact, one of the bowl projections I saw was LSU in the Texas Bowl, possibly playing Baylor a week or two ago. So, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that can change there, but you know, a lot of guys are opting to go hunting this weekend, and they've turned the page on LSU football because once you start talking about Texas Bowls and Music City Bowls, everybody kind of tunes out. And what happened last night makes it even worse. So, but we're gonna see what kind of crowd they have for Vanderbilt. They've got to have it. You lose to Florida, and I think this Vanderbilt team is better than Florida.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're steady. They've been they're tough as nails. Mike, what does it mean if you think about college football, where LSU is in the upper echelon? And yes, we know Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, etc. But what does it say when LSU may not have enough oomph to recruit and get the players they want?
Well, you know what's crazy is I'm looking at this roster and they've got holes everywhere. And you're like, well, why is this? It's not because LSU has been losing a bunch of the key Louisiana players. They've been locking down the state of Louisiana since Brian Kelly got here. So I think there's a combination of the state not producing it's several key positions, and then some of the Louisiana talent has not developed yet. And then probably the biggest of all is Brian Kelly making some poor decisions early on with defensive staff hires and some misfortune there. Really on defense with the hire of Blake Baker and Bo Davis and Corey Raymond and all those guys on defense, Peoples. They started all over. This is going to be their first class. But, LSU fans don't want to hear that, because I think as bad as this season's looking, I think next year is going to be just is tough. The season gets tougher. The schedule next year gets tougher. You open at Clemson. Alabama's on the road. Ole Miss on the road. You go to Norman, Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's going to be much improved next year. So it doesn't get any easier, and you've got question marks at every single position on the roster. And look, I thought with Bryce Underwood coming in, 26 was the year to really have high expectations for LSU. Without him, I don't know what the expectations are going to be in a couple of years. It might now be on a 3-year plan instead of a 2-year.
What do you think Brian Kelly has to do coaching staff-wise this offseason? It doesn't – like, on the surface, it doesn't look like much. It may be just, changing scheme up a little bit. But, I mean, they went big for Baker. I mean, they've got – I mean, maybe they lose Joe Sloan. I don't know. But what do you think he has to do to shore that up?
Well, I think Sloan's taken a big beating right now. He's had an offensive line that hasn't performed up to standards. You've had multiple injuries on the interior of that offensive line that's contributed to what we're seeing. Garrett Nussmeier in his first year as a starter is having some growing pains, just like Jaden Daniels had in 2022 and Joe Burrow in his junior year at LSU in 2018. But maybe he hasn't performed as well as those two, and you would imagine not. But then we know what kind of years each of those had their senior years. They both won Heismans. A wide receiver core that's not typical LSU standards by any stretch. You've got an excellent tight end. Well, you're going to lose him. He's going to go head to the NFL. And a running game that just cannot get uncorked. And of course, Garrett Nussmeier is not a guy that's going to do some RPOs and pull the ball away from the running back and take off himself. So that's caused some mismatch problems for LSU. They get in the red zone, and they're converting red zone opportunities into touchdowns has been atrocious. And so that's why they've lost 3 straight, and they got a lot of work to do. And the transfer portal, really, whatever number it ends up being, how many they go sign there, almost all of them have to be triples and home runs. That's how much help they need across the board.
Mike, thank you, man. I know it's been a big, huge day for you and the site with what's going on. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. You are our go-to guy when it comes to LSU. Have a great weekend.
Y'all too. Y'all have a good one. Talk soon.
You too. That's Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. It's man, that's dark and gloomy with that. And of course, when you have the dude as the quarterback that can make everything happen, what a kick in the nuts for them. And then they had Meadows, right? Garrett, the wide receiver,
Yep.
who flipped to Michigan also today.
But he and Underwood were kind of joined at the hip, right?
Yeah, that was kind of a package deal, and that's why once Underwood flipped, you knew Meadows was going to be gone.
I saw a video and this was in the forums. I know we got to go, but Taz Williams was showing off a Michigan uniform, and he's kind of he likes the attention, committed to Baylor. See if, in fact, Michigan keeps on at it. I don't think that's going to happen, but hey.
Is the Meadows thing official yet? I don't think it is
No,
it?
it projected.
But it seems like that's what's going to happen. Yeah, the Taz Williams thing, I mean, he's starting to do what recruits do, and you don't know if it's for attention, just purely attention, if it's to grab more followers, which certainly Michigan's fans are going to last a lot of other fan bases when it comes to numbers. But yeah, I mean, they're a program that's pretty hot right now, and you can see the appeal of just being an all-time top 5, top 10 program. But, man, he's been committed for a while. But as we've seen, that doesn't matter. That's one of the things you learn in recruiting. It doesn't matter how long somebody's been committed. They can flip at any point in time, including signing day. So I guess that's the only thing that came good from the LSU side is that Bryce Underwood didn't do this 2 weeks from now. I gave them a little bit of a heads up, but still.
Like the eve of signing day, like Novosad?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like that kind of a move. I know one thing, Emory needs to stay away from us because all of our teams are cursed in here. He needs to get away from the four of us.
That's why I think he spends one day a week out of the office.
Just to kind of not get cooties.
Yeah, and he showers and does an infrared sauna, disinfects maybe a cold tub just to make sure that all that's off of him.
I mean, we could have seen with LSU they weren't going to be great necessarily, but whatever. Florida State, no way you thought this was going to happen. Oklahoma, I thought it was going to be a rougher year. Not this level of it, though. It's worse than I expected, and you obviously thought Nebraska would be better than they are.
I thought they'd win 6 or 7 games. I was never
they could still
over my
do that.
skis.
They could still do that. Listen, your 6 or 7 is still a possibility for you. Garrett's dream was SEC title game.
Done.
Craig's dream was just 8-4. That's done. My dream was
to go back to a chance and prove that you should have been in it the first
year. Should have been in it. And not only did they take that, they just threw it in a wood chipper.
This could be what we see now with teams that are great, normally blue bloods, and then all of a sudden they fall off the map for a year or two if you hit the wrong parts.
I think Miami, they have a really good recruiting classes, so I think that they'll be able to push back against it better than maybe FSU has. But Miami's losing the whole offense. The entire offense. So that's my pick for a team that takes a dip.
But if you look at what they did this year by gaining what they needed, they're not done.
Man,
right?
maybe they just want to kill Washington State and they'll go get John Mateer next year after going to get Cam Ward. I'll say this, though, about Oklahoma. This is my final thought on this. Is at least they have a chance to make a bowl game. All they need to do is beat Alabama tomorrow and then go win at LSU. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I think 2 quarterbacks that will be in the portal for sure and most sought after will be Mateer and Fafita.
Yeah, right now. I don't know where Fafita and Oklahoma only needs to win one of those, but that's not the point. They're not going to win either one of those. But I do think Fafita will be interesting because you don't know all of the ties he has there with Arizona. He was the guy that led those guys to go to Arizona because McMillan was an Oregon guy, but they all kind of followed. Fafita kind of brought that whole group over there. So, I don't know where that stands, but for sure he is going to get a lot of pursuit by other schools. So that's going to be hard to fend off. He is going to get a lot of people interested in him for sure.
And I'll just list off the 4 that will be going after Fafita and Mateer. For sure it'll be Miami. For sure it'll be Florida State. For sure it'll be Oklahoma. And for sure it'll be LSU.
Oklahoma, it depends on Jackson Arnold and all that.
Yeah, but and look, it also depends on offensive coordinator. So say Oklahoma hires Ben Arbuckle. Well, that probably means they're going to try to get Mateer,
All right, it's what's weird about this week when it comes to recruiting and flips is it was all the quarterbacks, all of them, the high-ranked quarterbacks within 24 hours or so. All right, when we come back, we're not done. Peyton Socher, Kenneth Davis on the Big 12, Josh Neighbors, college football's countdown, Paul's top 5. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ted Teague, the GM and CEO. And my goodness, what they have with that Wagoneer, the 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer Series 3, the car that is just amazing. It's got kind of the characteristics at times of a really nice luxury sedan, and yet also the toughness and the ability to do what it needs to do like a big, nice truck. And then, of course, a phenomenal SUV. Heavy-duty trailer that has all the tow package you want. Powered deployable running boards, rear seat monitoring camera, tri-pane panoramic sunroof, seats for 7 passengers, and up to $23,000 off MSRP. And you also have the option of 0% financing for 36 months with a lot more to come with that. Ask your consultant when you talk to somebody who's trying to give you the opportunity to test drive it, to look around for whatever vehicles, whether it's SUVs, trucks, or also much more. Ventilated first and second row seats, Macintosh 23-speaker sound system, intersection collision assist system, drowsy driver detection, night vision with pedestrian and animal detection to save you and also others if in case you doze off, if you're tired. And, of course, you don't need to be driving if you are. It is a phenomenal car. It is absolutely incredible. It's a beast, and it's also beautiful. It is the 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer Series 3 4x4. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. And for the rest of October, buy any new Jeep and get the Jeep Wave program, which includes 2 oil changes, 2 tire rotations, good for 2 years from the date of purchase. Each Wrangler has a trail-rated badge, indicating that the vehicle has passed a series of off-road tests capable of handling tough terrain. These tests include off-road traction, maneuverability, articulation, ground clearance, and water fording. Ram Power Days heating up and has throughout, all year. But this month of October at Allen Samuels in Waco, scary good deals on over 300 new cars, trucks, and SUVs. Get a demo 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab 4x4 for $16,000 off MSRP. Get 0.9% financing for 72 months on any in-stock 2024 Ram 1500 Crew Cab or Quad Cab. How about the Sky One Touch on a Wrangler, offering the major benefit of being able to easily open and close a large portion of the roof with just a push of a button, providing convenient way to enjoy open-air driving while the weather is still so nice, while quickly adapting to changing weather conditions without needing to pull over, manually adjust the top, essentially combining the openness of a soft top with the ease of a hard top, making it perfect for those who want maximum versatility in their Wrangler experience. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with a Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Welcome back, 365 Sports on your Friday. And look, scheduling, sometimes we don't get to do things when we exactly plan on doing them. We've been, doing this live, so I'm not going to pretend like all of a sudden I was in the studio wearing a different shirt and then I ran back to my house. Now, this is, Peyton, I don't know if you know this, but this is where we're doing the interview now. This is the original 365 Sports studio in my house.
The sanctuary.
This is where we started it, so even after I sell this house, I'm sure it's going to have added value to whoever the buyer is.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, look, a friend of mine probably made twice as much as he normally would on his house here in Waco because he was one of the first episodes of Fixer Upper. So,
really?
Yeah,
that's actually interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That does have a little bit of interest. Yeah, sure. You can do tours. You can do everything about that.
Well, I think he sold it to someone who does Airbnbs. They're like, hey, you can stay, this is episode whatever. There are several of us here in town that people come in oh my gosh, look, and we'll watch it while we're in it. Oh my God. It's like watching Star Wars from the Millennium Falcon. But anyway, so that's where we are right now recording this and trying out different camera angles for Paul's at home stuff. And so I'm going to mess it around because I like to goof around a little bit, stuff like that. But Peyton Soysher rankings right now. Peyton has done segments all this week for us. So now we're going to dive in with a full back and forth on this, on the rankings. Peyton, it is this week. I really don't have a problem with the 12 that are in as far as I think we can nitpick about seedings and who's going to get home games and stuff like that. Yep. But I really do think that these are the 12 best teams. And the only one that I would flip in or out, honestly, is I think there's a real debate to be had about SMU and Miami based on their strength of schedules and quality of wins and things like that.
I think that's a big flip. That's the only thing that I would be surprised about with the change there. The real one that I had not concerns about or interest was why all of a sudden Alabama went above Miami for beating Mercer. There's been a couple of those things now where I've noticed that teams were ahead of one another, then nothing really happened, and then all of a sudden they're flipped back, and I don't understand why. Does the bye week hurt Miami because they had a bye week and Alabama played Mercer? There's no way you can tell me that. Oh, now that we saw what Alabama did to Mercer, that gives us a new perspective on Alabama as a whole. So I understand the SMU one, but with the latest rankings, we're starting. They're going to be neck and neck here in a minute.
Yeah, they really are. And look, as long as they both win the next 2 weeks, then we're going to see them play in the ACC title game, and that question will be answered.
Right.
I think the more interesting question that can be answered in the hypotheticals is the SEC has 6 teams that are in contention now. One of those teams will inevitably fall out because, it could be Texas beating A&M.
Yep.
It could be, A&M winning out, and then that pushes Tennessee out of the thing.
Correct.
It could be a random upset in one of the rivalry games that takes a team to a third loss that doesn't happen in the championship game. Do you feel pretty confident in watching the numbers and seeing that the 2 teams that are in the SEC championship game are in no matter what?
Sorry for cutting you off. I just don't see how you can get around it, right? Yeah. Especially if you're the playoff committee and you're trying to establish a threshold for the future, not even just for this year, but for years in to come up. it's very hard for them to come up, especially with a 12-team, a 12-team playoff, that you say, if you're not the best team in arguably one of the top two conferences, I think you can go back and forth right now and say who's more powerful, the SEC or the Big Ten, but I think we can all agree it's those two right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to say, well, the two best teams that get to play in the championship game do not get to be in this 12-team playoff. Something drastic would have to happen, right? You would need an absolute blowout from one of those teams where it starts to throw questions out there of, well, maybe another team in the West or another team in the East would have put up a better fight if you had West versus West versus East versus East, things like that. So I really don't see how you can't leave both of them out, but that's assuming that it's a good, high-quality game in the championship. Everyone's happy. It was a good matchup. People are excited. I'm actually also curious when it comes to those kinds of things. Are we going to see teams rest players, right? If Texas makes the SEC championship game, what do they need to play their best players for? Why risk injury, right? I understand people are going to be competitive. I understand there's a lot on the line, but if you're a 2 or 3 ranked Texas, you can lose that game 50-0, and I think you're still going to be included. Mm-hmm. So I'm very curious if they're going to start even resting players and how that would even impact the rankings, right? Hey, Texas was in the SEC championship game, but they decided not to play their best players. Are we going to punish them in the rankings or not for doing something like that? Or are we going to say, hey, it is what it is, and this is the setup that it's going to be? So I think that can lead to a lot of big questions as well.
All right, the big game this week, and let's get into rankings right now. .com. The big game this week, obviously, is Indiana and Ohio State.
Yes.
This is another one, Peyton, where I just don't. It has more consequences for Indiana. Like I do feel like that, especially since you're talking about eye test and all that, that Indiana could have this as their only loss, not go to the Big Ten title game because of it, and then legitimately, because of other circumstances, be left out of this thing. Because there's going to be a team in the SEC or Big Ten who is the sacrificial lamb of this that might have the same resume as other teams in their conferences. But, and this is where I see the inherent problem in some of this. And of course, also the inherent biases in the SEC and Big Ten that are more historical than current. But, let's just say, Boise State, Notre Dame, Big 12, ACC, like those are the 4. Well, that leaves 8. If there's 5 and 5, if there's 10 teams from those 2 leagues combined, 2 of them are getting left out. Like, that's just how it's going to work. And then those 2 fan bases, let's just say right now, because it looks like it will be Indiana and Tennessee that got left out, that would be the rage storm from those fan bases, in addition to somebody like, Arizona State getting to the Big 12 title game and losing, or Colorado losing. And going like, well, why do our 3 losses worse than, the SEC championship 3 losses? Like, what are we talking about here? But that one is going to affect things so much. And let's just say, because I think Ohio State has no stakes in this thing. They lose their 2 losses to the number 1 team and the number 5 team. They're going to stay roundabout where they are. That like they might drop behind Alabama or something. But and we can see here in a second.
And we'll see. And I have some and very fun hypotheticals for what you just said about who their 2 losses would be. So let me jump in real quick and let me
go ahead. Well, you know what? This is why I have you on. Let's go through it because you're the expert. I'm sitting here throwing out questions and you're the expert. I'm just going to sit back.
That's fine. Okay, great. So let's talk about this Indiana game, right? So this is a algorithm that's actually in beta right now. I'm going to release it later today, so I'm super excited about it. It makes more sense than the last one, and I think the last one makes a lot of sense too. But here we are right now. We have Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, right? You have, according to the predicted rankings, even an Ohio State win against a highly ranked Indiana team. You can say whatever you want about them, but the selection committee has them at 5. So they are a top 5 team right now. Ohio State beating a top 5 team does not move them up in the rankings. Oregon keeps the number 1 ranked slot, right? And they're on a bye week. So even that's how the committee is thinking about Oregon right now. They're essentially untouched right now, right? They're a lock for the Big Ten championship game. They're the number 1 ranked team. Leave them alone, right? You also have Penn State moving up ahead of Texas, right? So this Indiana spot right here is what's causing all of these changes up here, because everyone gets to essentially move up a spot for Texas, Notre Dame, Alabama, and Ole Miss, because Indiana's not there anymore to block them out of the way. But is with the understanding that Indiana is going to be losing a 10-point game to Ohio State. That's the line right now. Let's just change this up a little bit. Let's say that they win a 28-24 Big Ten grudge match, right? Let's go ahead and run the simulation and see where everything starts to shift, right? Because now the question that you brought up is, where do you put Ohio State? Ohio State drops 1 spot. Just like you said, there's nothing really for Ohio State to lose right now, but it makes it more complicated for those 4 teams that get a bye. Now you have 2 Big Ten teams ahead of you. Right now, the chances of Ohio State getting that bye just became a lot more difficult, right? Almost nearly impossible, depending on how that Big Ten championship game comes out. But look at this. Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State would be your top ranked teams. And I'm very curious on where people would have thought about that going into the season if the Big Ten would have the top 4 ranked teams going into some of the final weeks of the season. Now, you still have championship games. Things are going to move around a little bit more. But, the SEC with Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, and then Georgia right here, Georgia and Tennessee right on that bubble, right? So it makes things a lot more complicated. So Ohio State, I think you can make the good argument. If Ohio State only has 2 losses and it's against number 1 and number 2, then that should put them number 3, right? And both of them would be close, assuming that, this one was a 4-point win or a 4-point loss to Indiana, a 1-point loss to Oregon. You lost by a total of 5 combined points to the top 2 ranked teams, and you beat the number 4 team. So it puts you perfectly in that spot. Do I know if Texas and Penn State might flip? Maybe. It depends. But I think as of right now, this is where things are looking for. If Indiana were to beat Ohio State, it goes Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. This is wild. And then here's what's funny to me is that the Big Ten's propaganda machine is more or less, we have so many things where we've got this big TV deal, but it's not as they don't have it. It just means more. It's just it's Big Ten football. Correct. And that's what it is.
This is it.
Which
yes.
I find remarkably less pretentious than it just means more.
Yeah.
But the it just means more crowd now is looking up, and the top 4 teams would be in there. Everyone in the SEC, I think, is pulling for Ohio State right now because that lets them stay status quo.
Right.
As where the SEC can say, oh my gosh, we've got all these teams, we've got 5-6 teams that should be in this thing. You're like, yeah, but you guys keep losing. So
right. And I think it will make people think differently about that Penn State game also, right? Because everyone's saying, well, Penn State hasn't played anybody and they played one tough team and they lost, right? Well, they lost by a touchdown to Ohio State, right? And it was close at the end. If Indiana proves that they can hang, it changes the narrative around Penn State as well. Maybe the strength of schedule thing really isn't that important at the end of the day. Maybe good football is good football. Maybe we are deep digging, and I hate to say this myself, maybe we're digging too deep into the analytics of this. Mm-hmm. And maybe we should just be saying Indiana's playing great football. They can play with anyone in the country. If they really get beat is where now people are kind of take a sigh of relief and be like, thank God we were right. But I think you're right. Everyone is rooting for Ohio State to try and keep that status quo of Indiana doesn't belong in this party. If Indiana comes out on the road and surprises everyone, it's going to be madness for the last couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, no, I could not agree with you more about how this is turning out. But do the numbers bear out now, like maybe now definitively, that we are not going to get more than one ACC team and more than one Big 12 team, especially if Notre Dame, and we'll talk about Notre Dame in a second, if Notre Dame does win this week against Army, that pretty much nixes that whole possibility, right?
Yes. So the Big 12 is the team that's in trouble, right? BYU really just threw a wrench into everything, right? Because if we look at Big 12 teams, right, it's Colorado, then Arizona State and BYU right here. Right now, by the way, Arizona State's favored to beat BYU, and Colorado is favored to beat Kansas. So depending on how you want to view Kansas right now, Kansas might be the strangest team to really be trying and evaluate where they really are, right? They had a terrible first half of the year. They underwhelmed expectations. I think if last year's Kansas team never actually happened and it was just what we saw this year, I think people would be actually a lot more excited about KU football. But since last year happened, we had these high expectations going into the year. They haven't lived up to them, but they're sneaky and they're still good. They're playing really good football lately. So CU winning this game, there's not a lot of movement to move up, right? So now CU has to kind of stay there at 15. We saw this last weekend as well. There wasn't room to grow. Arizona State is projected to beat BYU. So now you're leading into a CU Arizona State Big 12 championship game with both of them on the edge of being in the college football playoff. So the winner of that, you would essentially have to say, is going to make it in. I think we could all agree upon that. There's some stuff that could happen, but there's only one spot. BYU is not going to crawl all the way back in there if they lose to Arizona State. Let's actually change that BYU score, and just because that might give us a little bit better of an understanding.
Well, it's only like a 2-point swing, right?
Right, or it's 4 as of right now. 4. So here we go. Let's say it's actually 26-24, right? Not sure how you get 26, but I guess it could happen. I don't recall saying 26 too many times. So if we see an Arizona State, now by the way, that's a BYU win against a ranked team. So now BYU has to slither on up back into the ranked teams here, which pushes back Colorado a spot. So you have to have that one spot that moves back a little bit for BYU, right? So now you have a CU BYU championship game. It is how it's looking right now, right? Arizona State drops out of the top 25. Look at this, by the way. Look at this. I know that's
there we go. Okay,
big for you people in Waco, right? Yeah. So I think that I think you're 100% right. There's only one Big 12 team that can make this playoff at this point in time, right? Because now it's going to be the winner here. You're not going to go from, let's say they stay in the 10 area. You're not going to go from 10 to 12 because you lose to Colorado. That's the 16, 15 seed. That's going to flip-flop you. You're out, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with the ACC, right? If we look at the ACC, which might even be in worse shape than the Big 12, right? You have Miami, you have SMU, and is there anyone else at Clemson, right?
Yeah, Clemson's pretty much on the outside looking in, though.
Right.
But yeah,
I was just about to say, let's just say Clemson does not play, right? So now you have Miami and SMU. Maybe Miami might be able to hang on in there if they play. Who does Miami play for the last game going into the ACC championship? Do you know? Because we know that Clemson and South Carolina play, right? That's a rivalry game. So Clemson might have a little bit of jump. They might, if they could really prove they beat a ranked South Carolina team, right? I don't know who SMU plays. I don't know who Miami plays.
Miami plays Wake Forest this week.
Okay,
which should be a win, and then Syracuse on the road next week, which
not a bad win.
A challenge for that defense, yeah,
not a bad win, especially for a resume booster. I think you're hanging in there. So I think they could make an argument. I think the Big 12, it's a no-brainer. Only one of them is going to make it in, which is kind of upsetting because all of their games have been miraculous the entire year. I think that's the most even conference that we have, right? SEC has a lot of those 2-loss teams, which is great. But I think start to finish, the Big 12, every game that you turn on for the Big 12, it's going to be a really fun one. So that's upsetting that only one of them is going to get in. But I think you could make the argument with how well SMU has been playing and their only loss is to BYU. I think that you have a good chance that someone might make the argument that, one of them is only going to have 2 losses at the end of the year. They probably both should be in. So you can make the argument. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think in the next week or two, when we get close to that, we can start playing with those numbers and we can start to see, are they a 13, a 12, or 14? And in that case, it starts to bring up questions on who might actually sneak in.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up with the Doomsday Scenario. The Doomsday Scenario is Army beats Notre Dame.
Correct.
That is bad news for either probably the Big 12 champ, but more than likely potentially the ACC champ, but more than likely the Big 12 champ.
So I'm going to say this is going to be a low-scoring game if Army were to win. I don't think. I think both these teams need it, right?
Yeah.
Both these teams have to have it, right? Notre Dame plays USC next weekend, and that's their last game of the year, right? They don't play a conference championship game. So depending on how you want to view USC this year, I think this Notre Dame saying we have to go all out on this one because this is our last really tough opponent. Army needs this to try and prove, because they're going to play Navy again, but they'll have their championship game. But those aren't going to be as nearly high caliber games as a Notre Dame win would bring them. So both these teams have to have it if they want to be in the conference championship, right? In the playoff. So in this scenario, we have Army at 13, Notre Dame at 14. Once again, that group of 5 thing makes things really gnarly, right? Because Boise State, I think at this point, would be a top 4 seed. And so therefore, the logic is still a little bit fuzzy to me, but I think that means that Army's in. If they ended at 13 and Boise State has a top 4 seed, you get your group of 5. Or does the playoff say, no, that is your group of 5? They just happen to be a top 4 seed. Do you know which one it is?
They can put, it's the 5 highest ranked
conference the 4 highest conference champions, right? Yes.
Yeah. So that doesn't when they initially said that, when the plan
no
was
one
out,
thought it was possible.
The Pac-12 existed, it was a thing, right? And so now it's not. So now you're going, okay, well, the 4 that were left were like, oh, this is great news,
right?
Because no way they'll rank the AAC or the Mountain West over us. And guess what?
Here we are.
In the first year, we have a scenario where at least the Big 12 and ACC are like, whoa, wait a minute. And they're going to start, I promise you, there'll be some Big 12 people that are going to sound a lot like SEC people if that happens.
Correct. So I'm very curious. This is an algorithm, right? It makes predictions. We've looked at historical data and we've tried to get a sense of how these people tend to vote, right? Notre Dame at 14, does the committee pull a Florida State and say, we would rather have Notre Dame in this. We need to have Notre Dame in this, right?
Yeah.
Or do they say, they had this is their second loss. They had a really bad loss this year. They're out, right? And then you have Army that's in a great position at 13 going into next week. That is a fantastic position for them to be in because they have at least 2 more games, maybe even 3. So they have room to continue to prove we are playing. We're undefeated. You're not going to leave Army out. It makes a great Cinderella story, right? It gives you all the narratives that you want to keep them in, right? It makes the Army-Navy game way more important all of a sudden. That game was just fun at the end of the year for bowl season. Now that actually means something. People actually have to really pay attention to it because you can't just have if a Navy team comes in and beats Army, now what do you do? Because it would just
they
so
would have
much
already
more
made their
complicated.
decision too.
Right.
That's it. Like, it's not supposed to count, but I do think that there's a look in for. We had Tim Pernetti on, and he the other day and said that it's a weird scenario, and that's part of it is that Army might not get in based on the fact that they have not played Navy yet, and they're like, what if Navy wins the game, and now we have this in the play. So they may not get in just based on the fact that they have another game left.
So the group of 5 thing has thrown a wrench into things. The Boise State thing has thrown a wrench into things. And then along with the group of 5 thing, this Army-Navy thing, that's just been a fun, cool thing to root for our country. Now it means something. Now everyone has to pay attention. So I think that this all happens if Army beats Notre Dame. Right? And maybe Notre Dame comes out and just blows them out of the water. And we say, well, it was a good run. And then now we can all kind of relax for a second. But things are starting to get really tense here. And, going into the playoffs when a lot of people were just saying, hey, we only need 4 teams. We don't need 12. We need 8. I think, you have CU now hovering around that corner. I think people want to see CU take on a 5 or 6 seed going into the playoffs. That would be awesome. That would be crazy. So, it's going to be good football. I think that NIL transfer portal has started to level things out a little bit more. Maybe it's not exactly what we all thought it was going to be, but things are getting really, really interesting going into this.
That is Peyton Soysher of rankingsrightnow.com. Go to Rankings Right Now. It's free to sign up. And listen, if you want to give them some money so you can do unlimited simulations, which please do that because Peyton's great. And look, this site is akin, if you're a college football fan, it is akin to like a YouTube rabbit hole because especially like right now, the good news is that you can kind of whittle down your scenarios a little bit.
Yeah.
But 8 weeks ago when we kind of started this thing, or we started at the beginning of the season, but like 8 weeks ago when we kind of got into it's 5-0, 4-0, like these teams, Peyton, I wasted so much time on your
I'm happy to hear that.
I've got to do a top 5. You fall into it because you're like, okay, well, what if A&M does this, then this, and this, and this, and then what if this team? Like, you can just go through and put all these scenarios in and create chaos, it's just so much fun. So go to rankingsrightnow.com, register for a free account, and you can play around with it. It's super fun. Peyton, thanks so much. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you. You'll see him on the triple option on Monday.
That's right.
With his assessment of the weekend. This is 365 Sports. Kenneth Davis, Big Ten Country. He's next.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott will invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533. Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Is your car ready for a makeover? Get ready to fall in love with your ride again at City Tire and Battery. City Tire and Battery is family owned and has provided expert service with top quality products since 1942. And with financing available, there's no reason to put off those much needed upgrades. Give your car the love it deserves and go see City Tire and Battery, located at 1502 South Valley Mills in Waco.
New arrivals just dropped at Barefoot Campus Outfitter in Waco. Looking for the best Baylor gear? Barefoot is the place to grab your gear. Game day polos, tees, tanks, caps, clear stadium bags, jewelry, and more. Barefoot Outfitters has all the essentials with unique campus apparel and offering comfortable garments and designs. Long-lasting images that people continue to enjoy wearing time and time again. Located right off I-35 on Spate, or shop at barefootcampusoutfitter.com and get free shipping on orders $75 or more. Go Bears!
Everything we do for you. First Central Credit Union says it's game on. Lower your monthly vehicle payments by refinancing your vehicle with First Central. Make it a winning season with refinancing set to your preferences. You decide the due date and frequency. Financed elsewhere? Save money with a new local game plan. Apply online today. We make it easy to score at firstcentralcu.com.
Membership and loan policy requirements apply. Member NCUA.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance has protected fellow Texans with auto, home, health, and life insurance since 1952. With more than 260,000 square miles of land and 27 million people, that's a lot to cover. Whether you're wrangling cattle or wrangling kids, we're proud to protect Texans in all Texan ways of life.
Call Deborah Holder at 254-300-7202 to see if you qualify to save up to 40% on your auto insurance.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. It's this, and then the top five, and then the show's over. Sadly for everybody, but we did get at least half the show with the Smokes in it on Friday, so that's a win for everyone, except for maybe me. I don't know. No, I'm kidding. But I love having Josh on the show, Josh Neighbors, host of the brand new College Countdown, which you can find on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It is started last week, 2 weeks ago.
Last week,
yeah.
You might be right. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But it's so go subscribe to that channel. I had looked it up when you told me about it, and I forgot to subscribe. So last night I did spend some time watching your stuff because I do enjoy your stuff. And it's just for people to know, like, you're still going to do Big 12 stuff. You're still going to do everything, but you're kind of expanding out all of your tentacles, so to speak, into different parts.
It's like hard not to cover the Big 12. Like the Big 12 stuff slips in because I was doing the rankings the other night, the CFP rankings, and it's hard not to think about the Big 12 because I think it's really fascinating the fact that Boise State's now overtaken BYU for that spot. And I mean, I don't think the Big 12 is in trouble, but you look behind them, Tulane's not too far behind.
Mm-hmm.
So an Army's not too far behind either. So if Army did the impossible this week, the conversation all of a sudden becomes robust.
Yeah.
I think the Big 12 is okay once again, but I mean, they're going to be the season end today. They'd be number 5, not number 4.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's jump into right off the bat. I just wanted your thoughts on, do they have the top 12 right? Maybe not the seedings, but do they have the 12 teams right as it stands right now?
It's like the 12 teams in the playoff, because obviously there's some that aren't top 12 that would be. Yeah, so I guess right now you'd have Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and then Miami, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there you'd go Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Boise, BYU, right? So then I think they would go. I'm not sure who gets left out. Tennessee gets left out.
Yeah, Tennessee gets left out. Boise right now would have the first round bye,
right?
So they would, and again, they would be. So that would make them the 4th seed because they'd be ranked higher than BYU, and that's. I mean,
they have 12 right teams. Yeah, I mean, the only other team I would advocate for potentially is I think A&M maybe. I know Tennessee is has 2 losses to Georgia's not that bad. Arkansas lost to me kind of feels like it's a big anchor for them. I know A&M got smoked by South Carolina, but turns out South Carolina is good, and South Carolina played a really played an awesome game.
Yeah.
So A&M is probably the next, but I guess their resume doesn't really stand up enough.
Yeah.
And that Notre Dame win will cost them some. The one I would advocate for being out would be Notre Dame. I think the NIU loss hurts them, but they've been putting a hurting on teams ever since that happened.
Yeah.
So they've gotten the retribution.
I think the real debate to be had, honestly, on the conference champion side is Miami versus SMU, but I think that'll get worked out. I could see if they flipped Miami and SMU just because SMU has a better resume right now than Miami does. I would do that. I think there's two things keeping Miami afloat in this thing right now as far as their ranking goes. One is they beat an SEC team on the road to start the season. And
by like 1 million.
Yeah. And so that means something, even though that's a very average at best SEC team right now. And their losses to Georgia Tech, who's just okay. But SMU has a better schedule all the way down and has their loss is better than Miami's loss because they lost to BYU, who's a playoff team currently. Right. So that's the only argument I can see, and I could see you making it. But let's face it. Oh, and the other thing that's helping Miami is
Cam Ward.
Yeah, that thing that's out there. So you kind of have to say, because we've been told that who the starting quarterback is a very, very, very important
thing. Don't get hurt this time of year. Right? Yeah. God forbid. I think, you know what, Paul, this question raises a really interesting point. This conversation raises a really interesting question. Like, do they give an F about the resumes when it's going to be like it's Miami, SMU, and it's going to get sorted out? Mm-hmm. Like, are they going to make sure the logic tracks always? You know, and because that's kind of a question when it's like, look, we're using the Missouri win to the Missouri is like propping up A&M in some ways and propping up Alabama in some ways, right? And they keep them in the rankings and helps prop them up. But like, will they just drop? Will they treat Missouri the same at the end of the season once they really don't need them anymore to prop teams up? Mm-hmm. Kind of a question I have, and kind of the same debate right here. Like, okay. Are you going to use I'm with you. I think SMU should be ahead of Miami. And I think that's not, I don't think it's crazy. Like, I think like deficiency, like SMU to me is a more complete team. The highs for Miami are very, very high. They've got a great player in Cam Ward, but I mean, they've been doing the Baylor TCU fire drill, like every week for a while, and it ended up biting them. SMU does not feel like that to me. And their loss was early, and it was by 3 to a team that ended up being really, really good. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you on that point, but it's interesting, like how that, how does that look as we continue? Are they going to evaluate resumes honestly? Or are they going to have teams just stay where they are despite some results and just be like, well, they're going to work it out. Will they put Texas and, Alabama, even though they haven't played, if Texas ends up with 2 losses, they're going to put them in similar spots. How are they going to evaluate them? Stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. IU, Ohio State this week. There's been some like wild takes on what IU should do just to like take the lump in this game.
Did people get bored? I think people got bored because the top 5 didn't change. All of a sudden they're like, let's talk about Indiana. And I'm like, why? They've been good all year. All of a sudden now we're like, it's like the media is getting, I don't know what Indiana did to people. Maybe everybody just still hates Dan Dockich, but like, it's like they're just getting whipped by everybody all of a sudden in the national media. And I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know either. I don't get it. I don't, but Indiana they're double-digit dogs. I know they could very well win this game. And I think the best news for Ohio State is it doesn't matter what happens to you in this game. You're fine either way. But on the other side of that,
are they?
Indiana, I think so, because if Ohio State loses this game, they're going to drop no lower than 5th or 6th. And their losses will be to the number 1 and likely number 2 teams in the country, because those 2 teams will be 11-0 and playing in the Big Ten championship game, and they'll have a win over what will potentially be the number 3 or 4 team in the country. So they'll be protected because, both their losses are better than both of any of the SEC losses.
Yeah.
Right. So
fair point.
If you take those, then you're really like, if Indiana wins this game, Tennessee is screwed. And Ole Miss is maybe now behind it a little bit too, because they've got the Kentucky loss.
Yeah, so, I just wouldn't love it if Indiana goes into Ohio State and beats them.
Yeah. So
I guess the general concept, but like once again, Indiana's good. So, I mean, no, I think you're right. That's a good point. I really hadn't thought about, Ohio State's station and all of this up until you brought it up. Because you have one loss, you kind of just. I mean, I'm still so focused on I'm still in 1-loss mode. You can't take number 2, mind frame, and that's gone now. That's totally gone now. So you're right. And plus that Penn State win props them up too. So I think it's good. It's a really good win to have. Yeah. I guess they're fine. Yeah. Indiana. I mean, but like, if Indiana loses by like 10, they should be in. Or do you agree with that?
I think we should apply the same logic to the loser of this game.
Yeah.
Look, so Indiana's resume would be exactly the same as Penn State's. So you're going to put Penn State in and not Indiana?
Right.
Why? Because I mean, like, the resume is exactly the same. They both had middling non-con opponents at best. They they didn't beat anybody of note. They both
beat everybody badly besides Michigan.
Yeah,
Pretty
badly. And look, Penn State has if you have an ugly win on it, like Bowling Green took them down to the wire in that game. So they both have honestly you would be what's the thing from The Office where Creed I told him to pick out the differences in these pictures and they're both the same. That's what the committee would be doing. They'd be Creed looking at these two pictures going, all right, but they're both the same.
But
they're both the absolute same.
One's got a pretty lion next to it, and we like the pretty lion because a pretty lion we've seen a whole lot before, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of what happens in a lot of these situations where it's like Texas. You put up Texas' resume, it's not who's Texas' best win. And so I think Penn State's going to get the benefit of the doubt because of the logo. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I agree with you on this one. Yeah, no. So I mean, they're there. All right. We are now to where coaches would normally getting fired, and some of them are. Most of them are coordinators, but the jobs we've seen open are Charlotte and East Carolina, and all that. Is there going to be a P4 opening this year? I think if there is, it's only because, let's say, Lincoln Riley gets, swayed by, the Bears or something to come and coach Caleb, which I don't think is going to happen. Or Neil Brown, they pull the plug on that at West Virginia, but due to the House settlement coming up and they don't know financial things there, and the fact that, who you going to get right now? So, who's out there? You'd have to poach, and I don't think there's a lot of poaching to be done. So I think you made a good point about Neil Brown. Did you hear the interview, by the way? The interview he did at his coach's show where he was he kind of went off on a fan who called. Yeah. And two things here. Number one, they're not having the worst season. They're not having a season from hell. But number two, they are having a disappointing season. They should look better than they do. But I think for Big 12 and ACC schools, with the financial stuff looming, this is where you kind of play it close to the vest, and you kind of just go, okay, we'll track, we'll not make a move though. That's what I would be doing. Mm-hmm. If you're a Big 10 or SEC school, you're a bit more insulated from it because you have so much money, and also I think because there's going to be so few job openings. Let's just say Mike Locksley at Maryland. Right, let's just say they get tired of Mike Locksley and they're like, this season's been a disaster. Let's say he loses the last two of the games or loses to the last one of the last two. They end up being 5-7 or 4-8 or 5, whatever it is, 5-7, 4-8. So they're like, no, they're a Big 10 school though, and you're going to be the only power conference opening, and you're in a place like Maryland where you got the DMV, right? Got easy access to the South, it's right there. Northeast, kids aren't too far from home. We're going to go into Pennsylvania and go get kids, right? Which isn't that kind of, Maryland, Virginia, DC is a really good recruiting area. There have been a lot of really good, especially quarterbacks come from there. And then obviously Virginia, the beach had a bunch of good kids, and, going down to the Carolinas, there's fertile recruiting ground in those areas. And they're going to have a lot of money, and they've got some really rich boosters there. So that could be a job I think comes open. I think, Arkansas should consider the same thing. Let's see how these last two games go. But if you don't look good against Louisiana Tech and you win the game still, and then you get housed by Missouri again, and Missouri handles you, which they always do, maybe you think about it because you're going to be the only opening, right? Yeah. And I'm not sure about you, Paul, but I'm actually not a huge believer in you have to have the guy picked out. You have a list. But you don't have to Arkansas does not need to know, okay, for sure we have to go and get Jeff Miller. Okay, we have to go get Summerall. I think the whole thing about my whole problem with Sam Pittman living in Arkansas and covering the team is I always ask people, what does Arkansas do well? Nothing. And what's their identity? They don't have one. And we're in year number 5. And if that's the case for your program, then pull the trigger on it. Or like if you're, maybe Wisconsin, I don't think they will, but it's like, hey, we've tried the identity thing and it's not working out at all. And we need a change. Yeah. Like, I think there's two ways to look at it. And so I think you might have an opportunity this year because there'll be so few openings. I think there will be an opening. I don't think there's going to be a firing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like somebody's going to leave. Like that's what's going to happen.
Kyle Whittingham might retire. Like
I
think he's really.
But then they already have their guy, right? Morgan Scalley's taken over. So, I think it's going to be the lamest coach. Like, and that's probably it's actually probably not a bad thing.
No,
it's probably not a bad thing because I think coaches are fired too much. I think sometimes you need to. Plus, especially with the fact that Jimmy Sexton basically owns every AD, like he owns he only has one loss. I'll tell you right now. He has one loss, and it's Art Briles. And that's because, they made a PR mistake that, hey, we need to sit down and do an interview. Okay, who are we going to sit him down with? Rinaldi. No. Right. No. You don't sit him down with the best interviewer. You sit him down with the worst.
Yeah, like you want state-run media.
Yeah, exactly. You do not get the best guy at doing interviews. You don't do that one. So
I would pair him up with like one of the interns in the athletic department, like make him into like a media guy, does the bonus content on your TV feed, or like the person who calls the home games on ESPN Plus for basketball, like that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, Josh, last thing. Who is your Big 12 champ right now? Who's going to win it?
Yikes. Colorado.
Okay.
Colorado.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I mean, like they've worked out they've got the best two players in the league, and they've worked out how to use them.
Yeah. They certainly have. And they have overcome their deficiencies. They
just know they're like, I mean, they've got the guy who, like, I'm kind of over the point now where I'm like, okay, Shedeur Sanders would be a good quarterback in a lot of classes. Like, it's not just a weak class. He's number one here, and he'd have a fighting chance to be number one in a lot Yes,
he absolutely
he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, he like the top two picks in the draft are likely him and Travis Hunter. Like, it's likely them. Now, what happens when those guys are gone remains to be seen.
Right.
But they've got the defense pretty much fixed. Really.
As much as it can be, yes.
As fixed as it can be. Yeah. They don't just get gashed anymore. Now, the offensive line is still, outside of Jordan Seaton, tragic, but they figured it out. Like, get the ball out quick. You've got guys who can run like deer and do it. Josh Neighbors, College Countdown. Look him up. This is 365 Sports. The top 5 is next.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
time for Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. It's Friday. Means a lot of football is coming our way. But let's talk about some CFP narratives that need to die. And don't forget, bitonbeef.com through Texas Beef House, 365 Sports promo code. Get your discount on checkout when you win that auction. Number 5 of the CFP narratives that need to die. Team A would never lose to Team B. Stop. Just don't. This makes no sense. Upsets happen all the time. And to play the hypothetical game, like, do you really believe? I don't know. Let's see them play. And if Team B gets their ass whipped, then they get their ass whipped. If Team B wins, then they win. Nothing's going to change in your life one way or the other. So stop with this narrative. It's stupid. I'm talking to you, bald SEC clown. Number 4. Losses are more important than wins. No, they're not. They're absolutely not. Wins should matter. Being proven on the field should matter. Yes, I know that there's this idea that you want the 12 best teams, but sometimes the best and most talented teams don't win things. There are scores of Yankee teams that have not won the World Series, but if you line them up, they're the best team. It's about who's winning now and who's earned their way in. So if you're 9-3 in the SEC and you don't make it, tough. Win another game next year and make it to the playoff then. Stop crying about your schedule. This is what you wanted. Same thing for any conference. Well, our 3 losses are better than... No, they're not. Number 3, the eye test is the most important. This is another thing where they're like, well, we're looking at this team and these guys are faster than this guy or they had better recruiting ranking. No. Let them earn it on the field. If they lose the game, that's important. Stop with your eye test and going, well, this actually I think is happening a lot with Miami and SMU. Miami has Cam Ward. SMU's been better on both sides of the ball, at least more balanced. Miami has one of the best offenses, if not the best one in the country. But they have Cam Ward. Kevin Jennings is really good, but man, he's no Cam Ward. So I think that's what's affecting the eye test on Miami and SMU is that Cam Ward is magic. Kevin Jennings is effective. And they're saying, well, Miami needs to be ranked higher than SMU, even though SMU has the better resume, the better defense, and the more consistent team so far this year. And the same record. And guess what? By your own metric, a way better loss. Number 2, strength of schedule means different things. Thank you, Mr. President. It does not. You have to get a basic metric for what it really is. And some of the strength of schedule is really based on before this year of history. No. Strength of schedule is right now. Who they've beaten, who they've lost to, and who wins the games. That's what strength of schedule is. Get a solid metric across the board of what that is and stop making it just, again, back to the eye test. Because right now, strength of schedule doesn't seem to matter because anytime the numbers are thrown out about the strength of schedule, the narrative of the eye test jumps over the strength of schedule. And number 1, making the SEC title game is reward enough. Yes, I did have to take another shot at Greg Sankey here. He would not die on this hill for any other conference. So if making the SEC title game is reward enough, that means making that any title game is reward enough. You cannot raise and lessen the value of your own title game based on what you want to happen. You have to have the same value across the board. But hypocrisy knows no bounds in college football. It especially knows no bounds in the SEC. But making the CFP based on just making the title game, well, if that's their 3rd or maybe even 4th loss in certain seasons, then maybe they shouldn't be in over a team that has 1 or 2 losses. On the field has to mean something. And just getting to a game is not reward enough. I'm done with my rant. we're done with the show. It's Friday. Have a good weekend, everybody.